Something's wrong. Calling to order the Monday, January 27th, 2025, meeting of the 40th Council of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Mitchell, please call the roll.
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Black.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gavin.
Here.
Councilmember Hennan.
Here.
Councilmember Patterson.
Here.
Councilmember Vellani.
Here.
Mayor Dean.
Here. Our first order of business is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Gavin with support from Councilmember Baker. Are there any changes or corrections? Seeing none, Ms. Mitchell, please call the roll.
Black.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennan.
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes.
Vellani.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes, the agenda has been approved. So we have a special guest with us this evening. Congresswoman Haley Stevens is here, and I have opted to use my mayor's moment, mayor-led moment of reflection for this legislative update. So welcome, Congresswoman Stevens. Come on up.
Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate a good mayor's moment.
Yeah.
and I deeply appreciate this time to be in the incredible city of Berkeley with all of you. And I really want to take a moment to also just salute this council, the city government, and your leadership, Madam Mayor. It is a true privilege to work alongside all of you. I think that this is the first city council meeting, and I have been to many all over our district of 26 communities where I have seen candy passed out, council member to council member. So I salute you, Council Member Vellani.
We'll share. If you want to wear
I like the nuts. With my chocolate.
We take care of each other.
And that's great to see. And certainly it's also really nice to reflect on Berkeley as a community. You make this a destination. Certainly with the art festivals and the pride and just what you do for entrepreneurs and small businesses. This really remains one of the strongest and best communities to be a startup, to be a business owner, a shop owner, to put your idea forward, to get affordable rent, to somehow have in your city charter that you will not have to pay for parking. And we're all battling for parking all over Oakland County. And of course, where you're situated, close proximity to Detroit, great public schools, and certainly a nice proximity to a whole host of the population here in Oakland County. But I am here tonight as it kicks off what I call my favorite part of my job, a district work period, where we get a break from our lawmaking, we get to breathe the air of our community, the communities that we represent, go to the grocery store. We also love all the markets that we have in Berkeley. You got some good markets. West Borno is always doing a nice job. I like that they employ the high school students, and you get to hear what's on people's minds, but you also get to exchange with what is going on in Washington. So the new legislative session of Congress, the 119th session of Congress, kicked off on January 3rd. Just this month, it's been, it's always the first month of the year feels like very long. We're past the holidays and we're getting back in the groove. And then, of course, we saw the peaceful transition of power from the 46th President of the United States to the 47th President of the United States, and his administration is getting underway. So what you're seeing right now are the cabinet confirmations, the appointments that the Senate has to confirm. So I'm not a member of the United States Senate, so I don't have to vote on the Senate confirmations. But what I am working on in the Congress is certainly taking the votes that have been put forward. We had some pretty contentious votes on immigration, things like the Laken Riley Act. Laken Riley was individual who was a beautiful young woman who was killed in Georgia, and they put forward legislation to make it seem like that isolated incident was a way to crack down on people with protected status, as well as our what we call our dreamers, our DACA individuals. And I just thought this legislation went a little too far. We all know we need comprehensive immigration reform. It needs to be bipartisan. I don't think we need to be taking individuals who are rightfully on the path to citizenship here in the United States of America and putting them in detention centers. So that's just like a little glimmer of some of the things that are going on in Washington. I certainly always look to put forward transparency, and we're getting our committee assignments. So I've been reappointed to the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee, which has been a real boon for those of us here in Oakland County who are focused on the economic development agenda. This is a committee where I played a lead role in passing the Bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act into law. It took a tranche of money, put it out into the marketplace. It was met by quadruple the capital contributions from the private sector. So we're taking some government money, but we're matching it with what the private sector is able to put in so that we can produce semiconductors at rate here in the United States of America. As compared to having them go overseas where they have an incentive structure and obviously low labor costs. This is palpable for us here in Michigan, Mayor, because of our automotive sector and how reliant we are on those microchips. And so we're pleased to have that success. And now I'm working on minerals, because I really think that we got to focus on critical minerals. If we got a clean economy, and I know Councilmember Baker, you're so focused on, the new generation of vehicles that are coming in, and we're leading the way here in Michigan with our great automotive and manufacturing sector. But we've got to have the public-private partnerships to succeed in winning the future. And I know, Councilmember Black, that this is also deeply important to you as a service member and as someone who is looking at also global affairs. And trust me, I'm taking the votes to pass our federal budget, but I'm looking at that grand competition with the Chinese Communist Party. And I'm looking at how a place like where we call home here in Berkley, Michigan, where we come out on top, where it's our jobs, it's the value of our workforce, working so close, this community so tied in with organized labor, our labor movement, good quality jobs that are essential to this clean energy revolution that is underway whether we like it or not. And so I want to make sure that our voice and our leadership is at the table. These are some of the things that I'm working on for all of our incredible community members who are here this evening as well. The heady things of Washington and all these major topics. Well, I want to make sure all of you know that I am here to make government work for you. And so obviously the wonderful mayor who makes everyone feel right at home, recognize Michael Tash, my deputy district director, who is here as well. Well, we do community service. We make sure that if you have an issue before the federal government that needs to get resolved, headbanging issues, IRS, small businesses, tax credits, passports. Okay, you can fill out your passport application, but let's say you realize you lost your passport and you're in a bind and it's a last minute thing and you got to get an emergency appointment. Call Stevens. We'll help you get that appointment with the again, you fill out your passport application, okay? That's a 12-week process, do all that. But if you're in a bind, we want to help people in a bind, all right? We want to help people with the Social Security, disability issues, Social Security writ large. Okay, my mom just let me know her payment went down. Why? Because the Medicare costs are going up. These are things, though, that we have to reckon with. And while we're reckoning with them, and I know many of you are concerned about the spend and the government dollars going out, well, we make sure that the taxpayers of Michigan's 11th District of Berkley get their fair share of taxpayer dollars back into their pocketbook. We got to make sure. So we've done, what is it, Michael, 120 million that we've gotten back, a little over? Almost 130, yay, back into people's pocketbooks. These are these gum-up issues that we solve for people. We also like working with you on grants. We're still waiting for the final federal budget. I am in the minority party this term in Congress, But Mayor, we've loved working with you and the city on this lead project, and we salute you for tackling that and working on it. And that's a whole of government thing. We took that trip down to the Great Lakes Water Authority down to Detroit, where they're cleaning up the water. We're going to be reauthorizing infrastructure. This new NAFTA agreement that was signed into law about a week before COVID entered our lexicon in 2019. This is USMCA, is going through a review process. I know many of you are maybe concerned about these, the shooting from the hip claim of the president that we are going to have tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Well, we're trying to give the Michigan perspective because of our auto industry and what that would mean. We don't want to stymie growth. We don't want to have those tariffs come in 25%, 100%. That'd be damaging. So I'll be using my voice, but please tell us your story and help us tell the story of your small business, the manufacturing economy, and the growth. We are a destination here in Michigan. We are a destination here in Berkley, and I want to continue to sing all of your praises and do this great work alongside you. So thank you, Madam Mayor, for the moment. It is so humbling to be with you all here tonight, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending time with us this evening, Congresswoman Stevens, and for all your hard work with the residents of Berkley and the 11th District in mind. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Okay. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we've come to the portion of the meeting for public comments, and this is the moment to comment on anything that is not on tonight's agenda. Please direct your comments to the chair. You will have 3 minutes to tell us what's on your mind and in your heart. When you come to the microphone, state your name and city of residence. And if your concern needs follow-up by a member of city staff or a department director, please leave your contact information on the sheet, on the table, outside this door, and someone will follow up with you.
Joshua Hunter, Berkley. Mayor, I'm speaking regarding the Community One field permit motion that was on the consent agenda. There's no debate. It was some sort of housekeeping motion for the Community One field permits. But this motion didn't make any mention of the agreement that was already executed without council's approval. I want to know, has council seen and reviewed the agreement that was executed by the interim city manager back in October without the authority to do so? I received the executed agreement from the school district. Their school board approved it on the 14th, and it was signed on the 15th. And it was signed by Nate Geinzer on October 31st. From the October 7th meeting, the memo from the meeting was very explicit that the permit agreement with the school district and Dad's Club was still being finalized. So this motion that was just passed is an attempt to retroactively validate what the interim city manager's unauthorized action, but I think it should be clear, retroactive approval does not absolve the initial violation of the charter. The charter is very clear that the authority surrounding city contracts is vested in council and it requires review by the city attorney as well. So I'd like to understand, did the city attorney review the final agreement before it was executed unilaterally? And this isn't the first time this has happened, so this motion continues to set poor precedent. Will any action be taken to correct this so it doesn't keep happening? And secondly, is regarding the unappropriated funds that were already been spent for this project. The interfund loan from the general fund to the new enterprise fund was not appropriated in the budget, but the money has already been spent. The cash in the community field fund is in a negative $184,000 cash balance as of November. And it's because this unappropriated interfund transfer from the general fund has already been spent. So this is a violation of state law and the city charter. You can't spend what hasn't been appropriated in the budget. So my question is what will the corrective action be for all this? Because these problems continue and without any oversight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda?
Greg Duras, Berkeley. Without belaboring the point, I am concerned with what I have seen in recent months with regard to the consent agenda, not just the item tonight that was just discussed. I do have concern about that, but it was meant to be routine items. And earlier this fall, I do recall, there's more than one, I watched the explosion of the consent agenda. And there was one that was $200,000 contract. That's not a routine item. It does not belong on the consent agenda. And that started under our former interim city manager. And I think you need to take a look at it, because I could make the case for a lot of things here that go under the consent agenda. And then why bother to have a meeting? Enough said on that. The other thing I wanted to comment on is lots of social media over the weekend. I did see one post that I think I need to mention to you, and that was the one that said that the new city manager needs to go. I want to go on the record and say, no, she doesn't. I wrote her a note on her first day talking about how I want her to succeed. I want her to succeed. The worst thing that can happen in this city is to have to replace our city manager. There are some other bad things, but that's certainly one of them. And she needs a chance to succeed. I can't control that. She has to control that. Her success is in her hands. But I think it's important, given that I'm probably associated with some of those things, it's important to go on the record and say, I would like to not be here tonight because I would like to see more success. But my walking away and going back to my life is not going to help the council, and it's not going to help you. But it's important you know that I want you to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am Christine Deek, and I live on Griffith Avenue, a couple of houses south of 12 Mile. And I just wanted to go on the record to say that suddenly there is parking on both sides of the street. It's a very narrow street, Griffith is, and we've always had parking on one side. Since we've had parking on both sides of the street, it's become very difficult for residents to get out of their driveways on a Friday or Saturday night. It's parked up on both sides, you know, big vehicles. People drive pickup trucks and big SUVs. And while they didn't block my driveway, they're right up to it. So when I pulled out to go somewhere on Friday night, I couldn't see. I was backing out blind, and I was just hope somebody sees me and doesn't run into me coming down the street. Finally, after 3 corrections, I got my car out, got down the street, and I was worried then if someone was coming the other way, where is one of us going to go? We'll have to pull into a driveway or something to let the other car through. Very inconvenient and scary, not safe. And then, of course, I started thinking about fire trucks, emergency vehicles. I mean, we just don't have wide streets on Berkeley. And Griffith was supposed to be one of the main thoroughfares. I thought it was deemed to be. I know it was done kind of willy-nilly back in the day, but it was deemed to be one of the thoroughfares. There is a light there, you know, for access to 12 Mile. And it's heavily traveled, you know, and people do speed, heavily traveled. And I just thought, what, you know, and the cars that are parked there, I can tell you, were not residents' cars. We all park in our driveways. Residents are, some people do, but generally speaking, people pull in, especially on a weekend night. Okay, they pull their cars in. So this was from the bars and businesses. We have a lot of free city parking behind the bars and businesses, and then across the street behind where Rite Aid used to be. There's a big lot back there. Park there, you know, it's free. You know, you might have to walk a few more steps. Good for you. You know, so it's healthy. But it was really, and I had a couple of friends over, and they were like, whoa, you know, that was scary. And I said, yeah. And they said, didn't you used to have parking only on one side? I said, yes. and it was perfectly manageable. So that is, I'd like you to take a look at that. It is a quality of life issue, and my neighbors are not happy either, okay, about that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Ms. Mitchell, have you received any communication to be entered into the record this evening?
No, I have not.
Okay, I'm closing public comments. Ms. Mitchell, please read the items on tonight's consent agenda.
1, approval of the minutes. Matter of approving the minutes of the 40th regular city council meeting on Monday, January 6, 2025. 2, warrant. Matter of approving warrant number 1406. 3, motion number M125. Matter of approving a motion to clarify the October 7, 2024 actions relating to Community Field Number 1, authorizing the Community Field Number 1 permit fees and terms as presented in the October 7, 2024 City Manager's Report.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Hennon with support from Councilmember Black. Are there any changes or corrections or additions? Seeing none, Ms. Mitchell, please call the roll.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennon?
Yes.
Patterson?
Yes.
Valani?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Black?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes, the consent agenda has passed. Ms. Mitchell, please read item number 1 on tonight's regular agenda.
Recognitions, presentations. Matter of receiving any recognitions or presentations from the consent agenda.
Seeing none, Ms. Mitchell, please read item number 2.
Presentation, matter of introducing Human Resources Director Jessica Stover.
Ms. Van Vleck?
Good evening, everybody. So I'm very excited tonight to introduce all of you to our Human Resources Director, Jessica Stover. I'll ask her to get up to the podium in a minute just to say a few things, but I first wanted to just let everybody know that Jessica was among a group of very strong candidates who applied for the job. We had a panel that interviewed, and she made an impression on all of us immediately. I think it's fair to say that she kind of came out as the right choice pretty early on in our process. Jessica comes to us with just under 10 years of experience in human resources, 5 years in the private sector, and the last 5 years with the City of Southfield. She has a degree in human resources development from Oakland University and is a resident of the city. She started on January 13th. She's hit the ground running. We're all very excited to have her here. She definitely has her work cut out for her, but one of the reasons why she kind of shone through in her interviews is because she seems very excited by the prospect of building something from a centralized function, at least from the ground up. So we're very excited to have her. Jessica, if you want to get up and say hi and introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Just a little bit nervous to be speaking in front of everyone, though. But as a resident of the city of Berkeley, I'm really excited to have this position and be able to grow the HR department and support all of our employees, just so that our employees can then serve the community. So it's very nice to meet all of you, and I'm looking forward to working closely with Crystal and City Council and the rest of our employees to just make the city a great place to work for everybody.
Well, thank you. And on behalf of council, I just want to officially welcome you. We're really happy to have you here in Berkeley filling that much-needed vacancy in that role, or actually the role itself. And we wish you much success and look forward to seeing how things move down the road. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Mitchell, please read item number 3 on tonight's agenda.
Presentation, matter of receiving a presentation by Dr. Nat Pernick regarding the 2024 voting challenge.
Dr. Pernick.
Thank you. This is the fourth year I've sponsored a voter turnout contest, and I'm pleased to announce that Berkeley came in third place and had 80.41% turnout. So I give a award to a charity picked by the city, and I actually had the amount wrong. I thought it's actually $500. I thought it was $250. I realized when I looked at it this afternoon.
Even better.
So we have an award for third place and then an award for 80% turnouts, and you get the higher one. So I have a check here, and I'm happy to present it to whoever. And if you want, I can take a picture and post it on Nextdoor, if that's okay. So
Actually, we have Kelly Smith here from the Berkeley Huntington Woods Youth
Okay.
Assistant. So come on up, Kelly.
right.
This
So
is-
that's who So if somebody wants to take a picture?
This is great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Pernick. I know you've done this for, like, as you said, 4 years now, and we're very appreciative and happy to see that money go to youth assistance. They are boots on the ground, making inroads in our community and assisting families and youth, and we appreciate all the good work that you and Youth Assistance does, Kelly. So thanks for being here tonight. You're welcome. Okay. Ms. Mitchell, please read item number 4 on tonight's agenda.
Presentation, matter of receiving a presentation of the fiscal year 2024 audit by the Finance Department.
Ms. Van Vleck.
Yeah, so we are excited to present to you 2 presentations tonight. The first will be done by our finance director. For the fiscal year 2024, 25. So 23-24. To clarify, the city's fiscal year runs July 1 to June 30. And this report is concerning June 30th, 2023 through July 1, 2024. So I realize that was quite a while ago now, nearly 7 months. But it does take a bit of time to conduct the audit, and it's not uncommon for the audit to be completed and presented toward the end of the calendar year. This year took a little bit longer than past. It was being conducted amongst large organizational transitions. I think all of you understand that. It made it a little bit more difficult to complete things in the normal timeline. The audit was filed with the state by its due date of December 31st, and between the holidays and our process for building our agendas, which includes preparing and approving agenda items 7 days prior to the meeting. This is our first chance to have it presented to all of you. The presentation will showcase some fantastic highlights, including a healthy unassigned fund balance of $4.7 million, which equates to 35% of our expenditures, which is fully within the target range of 25 to 35% of our expenditures. Sorry, I won't take too much.
In conclusion,
And the continued funding of our OPEB liabilities. It will also showcase several findings of our internal controls at that time, which are essentially weaknesses, deficiencies in our internal controls during the 2024 fiscal year. I do want to make sure that it's emphasized that these findings had been identified by management, primarily by Carl, before the auditors were even on scene. Carl and his team, his very new team, we have 2 new employees in finance that rounds out a 3-person team. The first one that was hired in November, second in December. So Carl's been a one-man show for a little bit of time there. And they have been working diligently to assess, refine, and document our internal financial policies and processes. And they've been making great strides in doing so. Thank you, Carl. With that, I'll turn it over to our finance director, Carl Johnson. He'll give his presentation, and then he will introduce our auditor after that to provide the next.
And before you begin, Director Johnson, I want to communicate that generally speaking, there is no public comment opportunity when council receives a presentation. However, I am making an exception this evening, and I will add a public comment section after the presentation, after council discussion and/or questions. Then I will open up public comments. Go ahead.
great. Well, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, this is one of the most exciting days for me. This in budget time, it's the only time I get let out of my office. So, Crystal said keep it to 2 hours because we have a light agenda. So here I am. As per usual, I don't do things the customary way. Like I just screwed this up, I think. There it is. You're probably used to having your auditors come up here, make a presentation of half dozen or a dozen slides or so, and then the finance really not saying much. The reality is this book, this extremely beautiful paperweight of 108 pages, is the responsibility, 100% the responsibility of us, the City of Berkeley's Finance Department, and all the rest of the departments. There's only 3 pages in here that really are the responsibility of auditors. The auditors look at our information, which again, every page in here but 3 is ours, that we provide them, and they provide their opinion on it. So it makes the most sense to me to have the department that actually knows all the numbers to talk about the numbers and give you the update on what a great year we had. And then afterwards, the auditor, again, our independent third party, who comes in and says, yes, that guy that talks too much, the numbers were correct. And also, and more importantly, after reviewing our internal controls, what recommendations do they have to help us improve and strengthen our internal controls? So how I like to do it is the presentation that was in your packets as well as on the screen here. These are actual pages from the 108-page book that you have in front of me. So I just like to go through about a dozen or so of them and highlight the things that really are important, because I know every one of you probably read this. You know, I know a couple of you probably did. But just from an overview, how did we do for last year? So first and foremost, on the first slide here is our general fund, our general operating fund. Again, this is the fund that has public safety, city manager, finance, all of those kind of things. And so for the year ended June 30, 2024, we ended the year with an increase to fund balance of that $1 million, that $1,033,000. Again, a great number to see. And I know a lot of times the first thing you say is, whoa, wait a minute, we ended with $1 million extra. Why didn't we know about it? Why wasn't that available? Why wasn't that available for us to spend, et cetera? One thing to keep in mind with that is $575,000 of that was part of that rollover budget amendment that I gave you in August. And so there were trucks that were ordered, there was the HVAC system contract that was in place that was budgeted, but we hadn't spent 100% of the contract at June 30. And so those required us to roll over, i.e. rebudget those amounts in fiscal year 24-25, the year that we're in. So it says we made $1 million to the good. The reality is after we rolled those over to next year, the net bottom line was 475-ish. A great number still. So where did the 475 come from? The majority of that came from the positive results of our self-insurance fund. So we are self-insured, i.e. we don't pay premiums, so for like a healthcare, we don't get a bill every month for $150,000 and we pay it for each of our employees. We are self-insured. So depends on how how sick our employees might be, how healthy they are, what the actual costs were for the year, and that can go up and down. And we carry reinsurance to cover ourselves or whatever. But we actually had a very good year. We were about $400,000 citywide under in our self-insurance program for where we thought we were going to be. And that was driving most of that. Years like this, and then going forward, what I like to do is before the year even ends, because we kind of saw that coming, but remember, I've only been here since February-ish. And February, March, and April were spent doing some budget thing or something. I was screwing that whole thing up too as well. So really only a couple months to get my feet wet on actually what was happening here. But I really like to, so for that, we could have set that money aside to cover the overage on the HVAC system, and we still can. Or it could be to set aside for the new fire truck that we need to buy for 4 years from now, and those kind of things. So I like to bring it to the city manager, who ultimately will bring it to you to say, hey, it looks like we're gonna have the surplus. Would you like to set it aside? Would you like to put it somewhere here and start setting that money aside for those types of things? Absent that, it falls right to fund balance. Well, that's not a bad thing, and we can use fund balance at any time, which is why, as Crystal pointed out, we actually have a very strong fund balance. The next thing I want to point out in here is an unusual line item that I have highlighted down there, adjustments to restatement of the correction of an error. So if you recall, one of the first things that I had to deal with when we got here was there was an issue, or questions regarding the borrowing. There was a $1.5 million borrowing reported in last year's audit, last year, June 30, 23, from the general fund and the water and sewer fund. And if you recall, the explanation for that was the invoices related to the lead line replacement, the repaving, et cetera, all of those things were not allocated properly at the end of June 30. As a result, too much got allocated to the water and sewer fund and not enough got allocated to the street funds and the infrastructure funds. So that was a clear error because it caused the water and sewer fund to go into a negative cash position, forcing that borrowing. And again, that borrowing wasn't authorized. It was just a negative cash position at June 30, all of which was just an accounting error. The invoices that came in, too much was charged to the water and sewer, and it should have been charged to the infrastructure fund and the street funds. So those were errors at June 30, 2023. If they're immaterial errors, the accounting rules say just go ahead and fix them during the current year. These were substantial errors. These were more than $1 million worth of errors. It was $1.5 million impact on the water and sewer fund. So you can see there how it's noted there is, in this case here, the major street fund was reduced by $500,000. The the infrastructure fund was reduced by $900,000, and the water and sewer fund was increased by $1 million. And that is disclosed in the audit report right here under error correction. So on page 58, it details out the adjustments that were made to the beginning balance. So again, you're not going to see these. These were just fund balance at the end of last year, and then we fixed the errors that should have been fixed at the end of last year. In addition to that, one of the findings that you saw from the auditors is the fact that we did find these errors. So obviously the system in place last year to ensure that these errors are caught didn't catch them. These were caught by me when I got here afterwards. When the auditors first got here, actually before they got here, we talked about these things in the early planning stages, and we ultimately came to the conclusion that this is how it had to be fixed. So it was in fact fixed. And again, that's just the correction. So you can see there the water and sewer fund, the infrastructure fund, and the major street funds. All of those errors were corrected. And those are the pages in the financial statements. So our water and sewer fund. We know the challenge in our water and sewer fund is that we have this EPA mandate to replace the lead lines, of which we really cannot afford it. We just cannot afford it. We are spending every dime we have to replace those lines. We're using the extra voted millage to help us out with that, the infrastructure millage that was voted. That is being helped there. And every dime we have is going towards those, and we really can't keep up with the deadline from the EPA as far as how fast we need to replace those. And in addition to that, our residents are seeing a 10% increase in their water and sewer rates each and every year. So I know our councilwoman or our Congressman, yes, sorry. Don't deal with them very often. I just deal with council people. We have asked them for assistance with those grants for that particular purpose, because again, it's really killing us. I foresee that 10% maybe not even being sufficient, and we still have 10, 20 years left of this. So do we want a 10% increase each and every year? At some point, something's got to give. We just can't afford to do that. But in the short term, in June 30, 24, this just shows the correction of the error there. And so where do we end up at June of 24? So if you remember last year, we literally had zero cash and a net $1 million borrowing from the general fund. In the current year, we have $73,000 worth of cash in our water and sewer fund. In a water and sewer fund of this side, you should have several million, $2 to $5 million in cash reserves in case we have a catastrophic sinkhole or some catastrophic event. You can see there under liabilities, last year there was that interfund borrowing from the general fund. That has been removed, so that's not there. But bottom line is, all the money in the world the water and sewer fund had at the end of June last year was $73,000 to go forward. So going forward, we're really at a cash basis, however much we collect, that literally is just paying our operating costs and then the mandated lead line thing. So that's, just one of the biggest things that obviously is not news to you, but it's just kind of crazy. And to keep in mind too, with the water and sewer fund, you can't use fund balance. Most places we just look at fund balance. The enterprise fund, i.e. the water and sewer fund, is cash basis. So you look at the fund balance here, it says we have $23 million worth of fund balance. That's not what we have. You can't look at that because that includes infrastructure, that includes water lines, sewer lines, depreciation, all that kind of stuff. It's all about cash. And all the money in the world that we have is that $73,000 at the end of the year. But $1 million better than it was last year. So we're on the right track. Of the other funds, just want to touch on a few of them. So our solid waste fund, you can see here, that one we ended the year at $800,000 to the good. That, as we reported when we made the recommendation to eliminate the tag fee for the rubbish program, that was part of the reason why our larger than expected property tax revenues, the 5% increase each of the past 2 years, the larger than anticipated tag collection program that we received, it was double what we thought it was going to be, and the commercial fees that we collected were double what they were going to be. So literally we went from, was that $500,000 to $800,000 in a single year. So that's a substantial amount. That's probably the target amount to keep fund balance at. So again, that's why we felt comfortable recommending that the tag program could be removed. So the fund balance there is the $800,000. We also closed out some old stuff. So the 8 Mile debt service project. So when you issue bonds, the money goes into the fund. They earn interest on it. You pay for the debt, and then at the end, when the levy's done, whatever's left over either goes to make the final debt payment, or in this case, it was just cumulative interest through the years. So that just can get closed out. That got closed out to the general fund towards the HVAC project. Our capital project, the court capital project fund, again, there was 200 grand there. If you recall, you authorized the transfer to cover the HVAC cost as well. So that was transferred to the general fund last year to cover some of the HVAC costs. And the sidewalk program, we finished the last segment of the 5, I believe there is. I think we were doing the city in 5 segments. That was the last segment or the last section that we did. And so the next 2 years' budgets were budgeted at a 0. So you can see here, this fund balance is a 0 at the end of fiscal year. We spent 300 grand and we special assessed the 200 grand and the general fund kicked in the other 100 grand. So that's a net 0 as well. So all in all, again, the city is in very sound financial condition. We struggle with capital. We struggle with infrastructure. We struggle with those kind of things. We're doing fine operationally, but general fund had a good year, 400,000 of the good. What's 400,000 buy you these days? It doesn't buy you a new city hall. It doesn't fix up our community center. It doesn't do all of those kind of things. We lack the funds to do significant capital investments, which is needed. So we've done the capital needs assessment. That'll be coming to you shortly. The budget process will be coming up as well. So we'll be looking into those things. But again, the city remains very strong and a sound financial footing as far as that goes. A couple things to touch on are the pensions. These are always important. We're better than most in a lot of cases. So our public safety pension, the key with this is funding percentage. So for those non-accounting people, which I can't believe there aren't any non-accounting people, the number up here, the first number you see up there, that is the liability related to our pension. So if everybody lives as long as they're supposed to and works as long as they're supposed to and makes as much as they're supposed to, that's how much we need to set aside. In that case, it's about $32 million. Guess what? Actuaries are 100% wrong 100% of the time, which is why this never, in fact, works, and it changes every single time. So, but as of June of 24, they said you need to set $32 million aside. We need to set $32 million aside for those public safety members that have retired or can retire under the defined benefit pension plan. We have $20 million set aside already, and so we have an unfunded liability of that $10 million that you see there. So the funding level is at 67%, which is good. Anything over 60%, the state says you're doing all right. Obviously, they want everybody at 100%, but anything over 60%, you're doing pretty well. Key things with this, though, if you look at the trend, so this is the 10-year trend of our contribution. And it's not a friendly trend. So 10 years ago, our city contribution was 700 grand. Now it's $1.2, $1.3 million. So literally 10 years doubled, and we're only at 60% funded. So guess what? It's going to continue to escalate. And this is supported, the contribution is supported by the levy on the tax rolls for our Public Act 345 levy. And so that's what drives how much we need to levy, and where that money goes, it goes directly into here. So our contribution, unfortunately, continues to climb. And until we hit about 100 to 140% funded, it will just continue to climb and climb and climb. On the MERS side, we're not quite as good. So you can see there we're at $24 million liability. We got $13 million set aside, so we still have about a $10 million unfunded liability. That's under the 60% threshold. It's not too bad. One key thing there is the contributions. The state, if you recall, gave us, they had a pension grant that was available to those systems that were under 60% funded. The issue is, if you look back here, they looked at 2020 or 2021, one of these two, I forget which one, and that's what they based it on. It took them 3 years to get us the money. So the intention was that it would be enough to get us to 60% funded, but if you look from 21 to 22, our funding level went from 57% to 49%. So, oops. So we tried, but yeah, but that was the whole purpose of it. So they literally gave us $1.2 million, which was great, trying to get us to the 60%, but again, market conditions or actuarial changes, we didn't quite get the 60% mark. But again, we'll take any money they want to give towards us. So again, decent financial shape, but again, that needs to continue to strive. We are doing everything we're supposed to. So with these pension systems, the actuaries calculate how much we're to contribute. That's how much we pay each and every time. So we're doing exactly as instructed. It just takes a long time for the funding levels to really jump up there. And again, there's that contribution for that as well. $574 10 years ago, and now at $1.1, $1.2 million moving forward. So again, it just continue to go up until the funding level gets up there. OPEB, we're doing really good on the OPEB side. So this is a non-required funding. So the state of Michigan, there's no legal requirement for us to fund OPEB. They've strongly recommended it, and we're supposed to be funding the current employees that we have. But we have $14 million calculated liability, almost $8 million set aside. So our unfunded liability is only about $6.5 million. We're at 55% funded. Anything over 40, the state considers that really good. So we are better than average as far as our OPEB funding goes. So that is good news. Lastly, I always take a look at debt. You know, it's one of those where you can have a great financial condition, but if every time you do something, you issue debt, you're basically, you know, for lack of a better word, kicking the can down the road. You know, we could issue $10 million worth of debt and do a whole lot of good things right now, but over the next 20 years, you'd have to repay the debt. And you got to make sure you have funding sources for that. So our general obligation debt is literally zero. So that is debt not paid, any debt except for the water and sewer funds. We'd have no debt outstanding, which is crazy. I mean, no one has no debt outstanding. Again, we could issue $10 million, $20 million. I think our cap is over $100 million worth of debt we could do. But the issue is, how do we pay for it? You know, unless we just touched on, we're basically a break-even community right now. If we issued $10 million worth of debt service would be over 20 years, about $250,000, $300,000 a year. Where does that money come from to pay for that? You know, what do we cut to be able to do that, or what do we forego to be able to do that? And again, that's not a one-year payment, that's a 20-year payment to repay that stuff. So it's out there, it's ability to us in most cases like that when you go that's where we need the voters' help of, hey, we want to do something, and you know, would you agree to a millage? And that's, you know, kind of what the Headley override does and some of those other opportunities to do. But again, zero debt on the general obligation side, that's outstanding. And then the business debt, this is the water and sewer fund debt. You can see there we went from $588,000 to $183,000. So the biggest chunk of the Coon drain, and all of this is Coon drain. It went from 588 to 183. So we don't have a whole lot left. We're paying off about $40,000 a year, but you can see 3 of the 6 Coon drain debts we paid off during the current year. So that's outstanding. That helps moving forward in the water and sewer fund. Again, gives us a little more cash flow to be able to continue to address the lead line issue. So that's it on the number side. I want to touch on the findings. Any questions thus far on numbers? I know you're all loving it.
We are.
Loving numbers. So again, this is a great report. It truly is. So on the finding side, so remember the auditor's responsibility is to come in and ensure that the numbers are materially correct, but then they look at our internal controls and they evaluate them as far as the first thing they do is ask for our internal controls, ask for documentation of our processes and our procedures and all that kind of good stuff. Then they test them. And then to the extent they find something or a recommended improvement, they document and send you the letter, and that's what this is here. So we have new auditors this year, and so they came in fresh. They asked a million questions. And again, Crystal touched on it enough. I can't thank them enough. We were ready for them in September to start, but it turns out the actuaries didn't get all the information that they required to prepare actual reports for our pensions until literally I found out just the week before they got here, and it takes them 2 months to prepare it. So I had to quickly prepare that and get it to them, so we had to wait for that stuff. Our prior auditors, literally for the past year, have not returned a phone call or an email to us or the auditors. The auditor's responsibility is to look at the prior balances like those errors, talk to the other auditors about it, ask them questions about it, you know, see what details they have for the beginning balances. They wouldn't return any of their calls, do any of that kind of stuff. So it really put them in a bind, but they went above and beyond to get our report out. That is the sole reason it got issued on December 20th of this year. And again, I can't give them enough credit for working with us to get that thing out. The reason they started in September is we want to be done in September. We want the field work to end in September and present it in October and November at the latest. So that's still our goal. That will happen this year. But again, this year was just one thing after another, it seemed like. As long as my staff stays, life is good. So, let me walk through these findings. All right, so the first one, the State Budget Act requires that all governmental funds, that every dollar that's spent is properly appropriated. So that means you shouldn't be $1 over budget on any of the departmental line items in the entire budget. So Think about it, the entire 108 pages budget document. You shouldn't be over budget in any department anywhere. That's what most strive for. Most, I would say probably 90% or more, have some kind of finding like this. But to the extent you do, the auditors are required to disclose it, and you're required to submit a corrective action plan to the state on how you're going to improve your budget process to ensure that this doesn't happen. So that is, if you're a habitual offender and they're significant and you can't rely on it, the state can withhold revenue sharing if they so choose to do it. This is, I've seen places where there's 2 pages worth of budget variances. These are 3 that I'll walk you through specifically what they are. But again, the auditors disclose them. There's 2 in the general fund and 1 in the major streets fund for capital outlay. So they're properly disclosed. And again, this is the page in the audit report, page 32. So here's where those variances are. So here's, again, page 69 within the audit report. The first one in the inspections department, when I gave you the December 30, the second meeting in June, the final budget amendment for it, I put planning department account number as opposed to the inspections account number on one of the amendments. And you can see there, the positive variance of 17 grand and the negative variance for 17 grand. Literally, I put wrong department on it. So that the amendment went to planning as opposed to inspection. So that's literally what caused that one. So clerical error, my part, again, that's what it was. The second one, which is interesting, we don't budget capital. This is how our prior auditors showed it. They break it out. The state, on the first pages of it, they require you to break out capital. We don't budget capital separately. We budget it within each of the departments. So what our auditors did, they followed what the prior auditors did, which was break out capital, but that's not how we budget. This is the budgetary page. This should have been how we budget it. So they took the capital outlay out of all of these departments and just lumped it in here because that's how we've done it before. But we don't budget that way. We actually had this department right there, which is the Operations Department of Public Safety, was not over budget. It was actually at 98%. But when that capital piece was broken out, it caused that department to go over budget. So you can see there's a big favorable variance of 190,000 and an unfavorable variance up in that one department up there. So again, that's me. I didn't catch that when I reviewed the final audit report, but that should not be that way. And again, we'll work with the auditors next year. But in total, we were there. The last variance that was noted on there is the capital outlay in the major street fund. Again, this is where page 70 in the audit report. This one, again, those invoices that come in for our lead line, roads, everything else, I estimated what the invoices were. So what happens is the June invoices come in July or August or whatever. Before year end, I have to estimate what I think those are going to be and amend the budget accordingly. And so when I amended it, I didn't put enough in the major street fund. I overestimated the water and sewer side and the infrastructure side and underestimated the amount of that invoice. So I knew the invoice was somewhere around 500,000 or 600,000, but I put too much in the water sewer fund and the infrastructure fund and not enough in the major street fund, which is what caused that deficit there. So again, the corrective action plan is I now have a year under my belt here. I have a better grasp of where all of this stuff is going. And again, just be a little more conservative or a little overestimate a little more on the budget side to ensure these things aren't there. So again, all in all, 3 findings in the entire, 3 departments in the entire city being over. I think your auditors will tell you, they better, the auditors will tell you that that's not a horrible thing, but our goal is 0. The goal is always 0. All right, and as I move on to the specific findings that they had, again, new to the city, new only 4 months in. These are as of June 30, 2024. So again, we're 7 months removed from that. So a lot of these have already been started. They were already started when the auditors got here, but this is their report as of June 30, 2024. Your expectation should be that none of these repeat because we know about them. Once we know about them, they better not repeat, otherwise I'm in big trouble. So that should be your expectation. But I think it's important you understand what exactly these are. So the first one here is just related to bank recs. So bank recs should be performed, so they were performed by our deputy finance director, and they should be reviewed and signed off by someone who has accounting experience who can know that, yes, this bank rec is done, and yes, it makes sense. Someone who can actually look at it and say, yes, this ties to this, that ties to that, et cetera. So Our deputy was here till August. The bank recs weren't complete. There were still reconciling items or whatever on them. I grabbed it in August after she left, and the auditors were here in September. I finished up and recorded all the reconciling items and completed them all so that we had 12 months of completed bank recs, but no one was here to sign it. I didn't sign hers because they weren't complete, and she didn't sign mine because she was already gone, and there was literally no other accounting person here who could sign off on it. So again, this to me is just a timing thing. This is a standard operating procedure as far as bank recs go. They should be completed within 30 days. They should be reviewed and signed off by someone, with experience that can sign off on them. And then one of the other findings is following up on outstanding checks, which I'll touch on in a moment. So that's what that one relates to. And again, so now that we have the deputy, now that I have a deputy, she's preparing the monthly bank recs, I'm reviewing and approving those, or vice versa. So that's just standard operating procedure. It just happened, literally the auditors were here in September, she left mid-August and none of the bank recs were done. So that's why I couldn't sign off on hers and vice versa. This one relates to those correction of errors on the financial statement. So again, so our new auditors get here and they say prior years were wrong. So obviously there was something wrong with our procedures to make sure that there weren't material errors in our financial statements last year. So it doesn't matter that we told them about them or anything else. Bottom line is there was a process last year, June of 23, that didn't work that let these material errors get into the financial statements. So I beat up all the numbers this year. There won't be any additional errors related to that. This was just, we found that and they're required to disclose it. So that's why that one's there. And again, every single balance sheet item was tied out. They reviewed and audited every single balance sheet item, so we're in good shape. That's a one-timer. In those bank recs, we have lists of outstanding checks. The accounting rules say anything more than a year is basically a stale check. But you should have procedures in place to ensure that you're following up on those, i.e. send a letter to the vendor, hey, did you get this check? Reviewing your bank statements, make sure they didn't get you cashed and you didn't clear the wrong check, those kind of things. So the deputy was doing those until she left, but again, her bank recs weren't complete. So of the 300 outstanding checks that were on the June 30 bank rec, there were four that were more than a year old. So again, the process had been in place, but at year end, there were some that slipped into the over year old category. So again, standard operating procedures, you can't have anything over a year old. And actually, I don't like anything more than 3 months old most of the time, because you send out a check, who doesn't cash their checks within 3 months? That's literally it. So, but that's what that one represents. So again, that's just part of that's Bank Recs 101. As we talked before, this is an official accounting rule term. Our record keeping sucks. The procedures, the processes, all that stuff. We can't find a darn thing. We literally can't find a darn thing in there. There's 8 million files, there's 8 million folders, and we Google and search names, and we couldn't find a darn thing. If you recall, this wasn't a finding last year. So the capital asset policy, the cash receipting findings policies, they not being available, those weren't findings last year. So our prior auditors had our policies. They had those. They didn't write us up for those. So again, we reached out to our prior auditors and said, can you give me copies of those policies? No response. Literally every single day, emailing, calling, auditors calling, no response. So they had the policies that weren't there. Can't find them on the shared drive. The auditors are here. There's nothing we could do about that. So literally since I've been here, all we're doing is continue to write these policies and procedures and make sure that every single thing has them. Because again, it's not even just a finance thing. Most of the departments were lacking in the processes and procedures department. So that's literally what this is. We followed a policy, but we weren't able to hand the auditors our policy to say, here's the policy we're following. So again, the capital asset policy is anything over $5,000 should be capitalized. Here's how we depreciate it. Here's how we determine the useful life. Here's what happens when we dispose of it. That's the policy they were looking for. So that when they pull a capital asset and want to test it, did we do exactly what we said we were going to do? But we were unable to provide them that policy. And it's the same with the cash one that you'll see right here, same exact finding. The Kuhn drain one, this is interesting. The Kuhn drain, that one debt schedule that I showed you, those bonds were issued 22 years ago. So the auditors asked us, can you give me a copy of the original closing documents from 22 years ago? Yeah, I can't find last year's documentation, let alone the original closing documents from bonds that weren't issued by us, they were issued by the county 22 years ago. So the accounting rules are, we as the city, you have to maintain debt documents for the life of the debt plus 3 years. That is the rule, but no success. So we've already since then got in touch with the county and said, please send us copies of those so that we have them for next year. But that's what that relates to. The debt's been outstanding 20 years. We have the repayment schedules. We get billed for the annual debt repayment annually, but the original bond documents, because the auditors look at that and make sure there's no loan covenants or anything else in it, those weren't available. So they will be, they're being shipped to us and they will be available from the county. Cash handling policy, again, we have a cash handling policy, but a formal written one was not available for the auditors. And lastly, I'm going to blame this on our new HR director. Yeah, right. That's why she's here. Change in status forms. So the HR function, most of it fell under finance. And that meant anytime anybody got a raise or union contract rate changed, et cetera, there's what we have it's called a change in status form. That form is filled out and it says, so-and-so was making $2 an hour, effective July 1, they get $3 an hour, it's signed by the department head, it's signed by city manager, et cetera. So the auditors in their testing, they were able to see the forms, but not all of them had all of the proper signatures that they were supposed to have. So again, incomplete records. So that's one of those things where we've already met with our new HR director, and one of her item number 412, I think, on our list was to go through every single person and ensure that the change in status forms are current, properly signed off, et cetera, so that come June 30 of next year, we won't have this issue again. And again, ultimately, we were looking for a better HR module to be able to encompass this. Right now, we're using BSNA payroll and scanning all these things in, but there are HR suites, there's HR modules, there's different things that we will be looking into. I know our new HR person has used other modules as well that maybe looking into so that we can scan these things, have them better organized, have them in better folders, et cetera. But lack of anything else, at least we were doing what we're supposed to. It's just we didn't always have the proper signatures on. They noted a few instances when we didn't have the proper approvals. So I think that's it. Again, questions for me regarding these, and again, most importantly, you can talk to the auditor specifically on anything and everything. He'll talk about their opinion on the numbers, and again, they're the ones that had these observations, so feel free to ask away on anything and everything related to them, and Greg will talk to you next. But before I hand it over, anything else for me?
Carl, I just want to thank you for identifying these issues prior to the auditor even coming in, prior to Treasury. I really appreciate your diligence on that. I also appreciate your hard work in then formulating processes and procedures and cross-training so that these things don't happen again. I know it's been a heavy lift, and I know how happy you are that your department is full now, and I am confident in not only your ability, but the abilities of those in your department to continue to move this forward in a positive way. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that.
I have
Thank you.
one question that I don't know if it's for you or the auditor, but when the new auditor created the capital outlay expenditures department, and then that resulted in some negativity, was that communicated to you? Like, did you know that was going to happen? Was there a discussion about it?
No. So what historically happens is they get our format. They have our report format from last year, and they don't. The old auditors don't give them their format. They literally have to create it from scratch.
Okay.
And so they set it up just like we would have had historically. So like to me, it never should have been shown that way. You're required to show it on page like 5, 6, 7 that way. But back here, that's the budgetary page. It's the budgetary basis on how you adopted your budget. So again, they set it up exactly how we had before. Don't fault them at all on that. Again, that was on me when I was reviewing it to go there. And truthfully, I'm like, I did the same thing. I'm like, yep, that's where it was before, and it didn't dawn on me till there was the negative variance there. So
I see how that happened now. Thank you for clarifying that. Questions, Councilmember Patterson?
I don't know if this is towards you or towards the auditor, but it seems like a lot of what you presented tonight with the findings, you had already been working on these. It was just a timing thing.
Correct.
Is there anything that you didn't find or weren't aware of when the auditors got here?
Well,
That
so
was like shocking or
Oh yeah, no, and so that's the good part. I've been doing this 35 years, and I beat the heck out of the numbers. So this is what I do, and this is what I'm very good at. I make sure, like, I do not hand it over to the auditors until I'm 100% that everything is there. The benefit to you guys, and to me, the most valuable part of the auditors, because the numbers I give you, I'm very confident that they're not going to find any adjustments. The numbers are good, that kind of stuff. For you guys, it should be, what did you find? How can we improve this? I want to make sure that, we're running the tightest ship we can, all of those kind of things. So all of these things, even if it's just, okay, bank recs were done, they were all reconciled, but that signature wasn't there, that signature is there for a reason. It's there as a second, set of eyes to ensure that it was done and done correctly, those kind of things. So absent that, it opens the door for, perhaps errors per se. So yeah, a lot of these things, again, that's their job, is to test our internal controls and report back to you, are they working like they should? And that's what this listing is.
And then is there any policies that are not current that were in the findings? Is there anything that is still outstanding from their findings?
Well, we're in the process of redoing them all, because again, literally, we found almost nothing. So, and I think Councilman Black asked at one point, he would like to see all these when they're all finalized. So we are compiling them, and literally, it's not only on the financial side, but it's payroll processes and procedures, accounts payable processes and procedures, the W-2 and 1099 process. We just went through that this month, and all of those kind of things, we were lacking the proper documentation. So we're going to have a whole bunch for you guys to sleep over. So.
And then lastly, Ms. Van Vleck, thank you for the memo before meeting tonight. This is exactly what I was talking about when we discussed last week, the findings. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So let me turn it over to.
No, I don't think we're done. Councilmember
Almost got away.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is a question for Crystal or Jessica. Congratulations. Don't want to speak ill of the dead or the no longer employed, but give us some degree of understanding of what you inherited. Because based on what you've outlined here, this seemed like you inherited a mess. So without going or creating a rabbit hole, maybe just kind of wave tops on some of the issues, and if those were staffing, procedural, competence, common sense.
Sure. I think the overarching principle here is that you had a deputy with 10 years experience who had been doing her processes for 10 years, knew them, understood them, and was comfortable with them, and she was the only one doing them. So when that person leaves, and what probably happened is there was the documentation of the receipting procedure and the bank rec procedure, all of that stuff was probably drafted 10 years ago, handed over to the auditors, and never updated, never touched again. And as you move stuff around and as you copy over here, copy over there, it's not there. The biggest issue inherited was that lack of documentation, the lack of a roadmap. My famous term is accounting for dummies. There should have been an accounting for dummies on any and every process that we have. It should have said, you accounting person off the street, here, follow this. This is how you can do a bank rec. You download this, get this from so-and-so, get this from so-and-so. None of that existed. So when we went to process the payroll, just examples, process the payroll, the public safety department sends us over their payroll file. It says 84 hours for every officer. So the first time we got it, we imported their file in, paid everybody 84 hours. Oh, by the way, they only get paid 80 and the other 4 goes into their comp bank. How am I supposed to know that? I imported the file in and it went there. So the process is manually go in and remove 4 hours and put it in everybody's comp bank. So the first payroll I did, we overpaid everybody by 4 hours. And then again, it causes a stink, with everybody else. If there was a process, it would say, import it in and here's the next step you have to do. It's just little stuff like that of that would have made it a lot smoother. I mean, we had the worst thing in the world where literally every single person turned over in that department. And there was just no policies and procedures to follow. That was really the biggest thing. And again, some of these are timing, so if the deputy would have had all the bank recs done and completely reconciled, say 6 months of them or 7 months of them, so what happens is you do your bank rec and you go, okay, here's this deposit, I'm not sure what it is, that needs to be recorded. Here's this, bank adjustment that I'm not sure what it is. You research those, you figure out those, and you do an entry for them. Well, it changes the reconciliation. So you can't sign the old one, because that one gets thrown away and there's a new one once it's done. So there was a bunch of those reconciling items that ultimately in August and September, I reconciled and got them posted and adjusted in the ledger. And at that point, no one was there to sign those. I could have had Crystal sign them, but really the auditors would have said, she doesn't know accounting, what is she signing? Well, she's signing that you said you did it. Well, that's not an internal control, that kind of stuff. So the other piece of that is the finance director does a lot of the year-end accounting stuff. So the deputy's position was more of a day-to-day procedures. It was overseeing payroll and accounts payable, do the bank recs, wire the insurance monies and do a lot of that stuff, work with the benefits, those kind of things. A lot of time was spent on that, and not a lot of time was spent on the books. That's how you get the error of misallocations, on some of that stuff. That was significant. I mean, think about that. We didn't know until the audit report came out that we had borrowed $1 million, in the water and sewer fund 2 years ago. That's the kind of stuff that you can't happen. And even knowing that you were $400,000 of the good, that's what you have us for. We should be telling you that in advance of what's going on. We should know that stuff ahead of time. And at the end of each year, it seemed like it was more of a surprise. And so that's what can't happen and shouldn't be happening. So
you inherited a mess,
again,
and now you're creating SOPs.
Exactly.
These SOPs will outlive your tenureship.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah,
Right.
because I used to oversee a team of 33 at 24 municipalities and school districts. And so again, it was standard operating procedures, but each location is different. You guys handle things differently than Oak Park does, than Novi does, than everywhere else does. So each one, even though they're similar, they're all different. So here's what they are, get them updated, transition them over to others, get them documented, and then anybody who comes in, you take a vacation or whatever, someone can come in and fill for you, and with basic knowledge should be able to get most of it done. And that's the goal.
And that is exactly what an SOP should do.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Baker.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I'd echo my colleagues' gratitude for the work that went into this and for your time and more broadly for your expertise in helping us move away from the prior state to the current state and towards the future state. You mentioned a couple of times in jest about accountants and in the room, or if you wish we were all accountants, or we're not all accountants, but we wish we were, that kind of deal. Even if I was an accountant, I think your explanation and the upcoming SOPs are really going to help, because municipal finance and accounting there are significant differences than regular commercial business kinds of accounting and finances. And so if I didn't understand the differences, I might look at something and come to one conclusion, when meanwhile there's a perfectly rational and hopefully well documented, say, well, this is how we do it here, and that's why your traditional thinking wouldn't necessarily apply in these circumstances. So with that knowledge that accounting is accounting broadly, but there's specifics to municipal accounting and finance that we depend on you for. We're looking forward to more of that information so that we can better understand the nuances of municipal finance and accounting, separate from just general practices and things. So looking forward to that. Excited that you bring this wisdom and enthusiasm to the role here. And again, thank you for the report and for what's upcoming yet for us.
Sure,
Thanks.
appreciate it. Yeah, I really just try to put it in as simple terms for anybody to understand. That's my goal in my presentation, is I don't want everybody to be accountants, but I want you to understand, exactly what's going on. And so that's what I'm here for.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Hennon.
Yeah, I just, we've sort of covered this on the broader, but I want to drill down into one policy just to, inspect it, the cash policy. So the issue isn't that there was a problem with how we handled cash, which, could be fraught if done wrong. It's just we didn't have it written down. Is that correct?
That is absolutely, yeah, that's what they documented was happening. We didn't have a procedure to hand them to show what we were doing. Yes.
Yeah, and then, the one thing I'm not seeing in the audit, was there did it reveal any evidence of like any financial misconduct or negligence or gross mismanagement?
So again, that's a great one for our auditors when he discusses his opinion and what he saw and all of that kind of good stuff. So if we'll go, I'll transition to him if.
Oh, you're
next
not
then.
finished.
Oh, yes.
Councilmember Villani.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Say 3 hours. I'm good. Keep going.
First off, I do want to, and a lot of my comments are going to echo Councilmember Black, so I'll keep them succinct in that space because very much in line with what he said. But first, really appreciate that when you talk about this beast of a document, that you said the responsibility is ours. I think that is something that we have not heard from our finance team in a very long time. And thinking about back to July 1st of 2023 and looking around the room and the team and who was actually on the team versus who we have now, they're a very it's complete turnover. And I echo Councilmember Black's statement that you inherited something that was incredibly messy. It wasn't documented, and you've had to take that time to draft, because as you look through these, the theme is very clear that there's that lack of documented SOPs, policies, and procedures, or when they were there, it might not have been evidence that they were being followed. So I am very excited by the fact that you have been tackling those. What can you say to the fact of, as we think about maybe those who might be sitting in this chair 10 years from now, so that we're not in this same place? Because it's really great that we're going to get things tidied up right now. How do we ensure, and this might be a question for our city manager, possibly HR as well, but like, how do we as a city ensure that on our next server change, this and that, employee turnover, that all of that work isn't lost and that it slowly erodes and we're right back where we are now? So can you talk a little bit about, and I know you might not be fully there yet, but like what the plans are to ensure that we not only have a good foundation, but we're going to keep building on that and maintaining it?
Sure. Yeah, again, it still gets back to me with the accounting for dummies thing. So if you've got the processes and procedures in place, the documentation as to the hows and the whys, that is huge. That is absolutely huge. The other part of that we really haven't touched on too much is the changing of the processes and procedures. So one item as an example is the bonds and restitution accounts that our building department handles. There's outstanding bonds that go back 10, 15, 20 years that probably should be closed. And at one point, I think the reconciliation between that and the general ledger didn't quite work. So someone created a workaround where they started creating individual accounts in the general ledger to because I can't trust that system, so now I'm going to start using this. So literally we had a meeting this morning on we want to stop doing that. Let's get back to using the system how we're supposed to and fix the process. So this isn't just accounting. This is system-wide process. The accounts payable process. I don't like the accounts payable process. The accounts payable process right now is departments scan the invoices in, put them on a shared folder, and they do this. Most of my places we use electronic routing to do that. Electronic scan the invoice in, approve it, electronically route it to the city manager who approves it, and then it goes to the finance department, upload it into the check register, done. Again, improving all of those processes. So first step is we're going to document the processes in place, and then secondly is we can fix a lot of them. We can improve a lot of them. Not necessarily fix, improve is the better word. We can make us more efficient, because that's how I was able, when I was at Plant as a partner there, that's how I was able to run 32 communities or 24 communities it's not only the finance piece you got to fix, it's all the other pieces that have to be fixed. I mean, we touched on remote location cash receipt testing. Some places we use pre-number receipts, some we don't. Should we get a cash register over at some of these places? Those are the kind of things we're looking at to do that. So little things like the 2 cash counters we purchased, improve their efficiency tremendously, improves the time it takes to drop off remote locations, et cetera. So most of the time, and this is what excites me, I'm crazy, so this is, when I look back of my time at Berkley, it's what did I do? What did I accomplish? How did I leave Berkley in a better place? And so those are the things that I'm always looking at. We're beating up your CIP process right now and creating a new master for that. And again, if I can help in any way mold where we're going to be in the next 5 years or make it simpler for you guys to make the decision on where you want to be, I'm happy as can be, so. Yes, I'm sick, I know, but that's, that's the basis for how it gets implemented and how it stays. Because if you got a good process in place and it's working very well, it just tends to be a well-oiled machine. So.
I really appreciate your response. Having been up here for a little over 3 years now, I will say this is honestly the first time that I have some confidence and hope that like we are truly on the right track. And just because I know there will be people listening at home and I don't want that comment to be misconstrued. I've never had concerns about mismanagement or anything, malicious happening with our money, to be very clear. But these day-to-day procedures, being able to ask questions, seeing where things went, the budgeting process never felt like we had I shouldn't speak for others, but I never felt like we had the correct picture. And I feel like we are moving significantly in the right direction now with your leadership. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Bree said my stuff.
Okay, thank you.
All right. More.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I would just build onto that. It's almost as if those of us up here have identified there's issues and put in place the team that is going to move us forward and correct them.
Yes. Now, thank you.
Yes.
Oh, wait,
Can I
sorry.
add to that really quick?
Yeah.
Just to Councilmember Vellani's. Carl kind of addressed this a little bit, but finance is not the only area where we've identified that procedures need to be documented. And so to just expand on that a little bit, finance is not the only area. All of the departments are working on better documenting their policies and procedures for community development for dummies, for clerks for dummies, the thought process that any transitions in the future will be much smoother. And so I think it's done that way. And then also, as we have a centralized HR function now, working on succession planning and cross-training of employees so that when somebody's sick, they're not the only person who knew how to do the thing. So there are a couple of things that we're doing organization-wide to ensure that over time, our predecessors will not run into the same issues that we are running into.
Excellent.
So as an organization, we're moving towards that.
And thank you for adding that, because that is an important piece in terms of the big picture.
I just have one ask, and you can tell me no, but can we get an update in like 6 months how that process is going?
Yes.
My background in quality improvement and efficiency at the hospitals, it's like, it's making me remember those years I spent working with all those systems and improving it. So just a brief, even if it's in our, weeklies or anything.
Yes.
Thank you.
The answer is yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we good?
That was efficient.
Okay.
All right.
For real, thank you.
All right, sure. So I'll turn it over now to.
Nope, I'm opening public comment, but you can.
I tried. So.
I know. Have a seat, relax.
Thank you.
Okay, so I am opening public comment on this agenda item right now.
All right. That presentation changes my comment. My name is Jason Benedict. I'm a CPA and I live in Berkeley. I echo everything you've all just said. It's really, really heartening to hear the comments that came from council. It seems like you're understanding what Carl's saying. Carl gets it. Thank you, Carl. Sorry, I didn't address you. I'm so glad to hear from him, his confidence. One thing is, it's important to have competence in appearance and in fact. It's pretty obvious that we have competence in fact now. Now we need to demonstrate some competence in appearance, re-demonstrate some trust, and we'll move along in that direction. I love the idea of having the city manager follow up in a few months with us. I think that's a great way to monitor these controls. The two control deficiencies are material weaknesses. They're the worst control deficiencies. It's the worst type you can possibly have. To be clear, and I know that we now have processes in place. Well, I don't know. I trust that we have processes in place, but until something is documented, until it's actually happening, until someone's actually doing it and it's on paper, then yes, I believe it, I trust it, it's happening. So that's the comment that I have on the control findings. With all of the policy write-ups, I think that's a great idea. It looks like there's AI on the computers. Let's get to work. It also seems like we might need to revisit our IT policies if we can't find any of our documents that we had from years ago. This isn't something from the 70s, it's something from last year that we can't find. Like this is a .pdf somewhere, so let's find it. Also, to the extent that we had the error corrections within our audited financial statements, did we receive an unqualified opinion last year? That's an open question. I haven't actually looked. I think Wild if we did, but it sounds like we don't have a great relationship with our prior auditor. But also, even if we don't have a good relationship with our prior auditor, they're not, by ethical standards, able to hold our documents hostage. So if they have them, I hope we're escalating to get those back. That's it. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mike Wysick from Berkley. I'm very happy to hear that you guys are digging into this and finally putting together all the things that the residents have been calling for almost 2 years now from you, and you've turned a blind eye to. You know, it's just amazing to me that, like, the FOIA that we received on bank recs, they hadn't been done for 7 months. I mean, outstanding unreconciled balances of almost $90,000. I mean, cash is king in any organization. And, you know, if you're not reconciling the most simple element, which is cash, I mean, I can only imagine how bad things are. You know, it's you know, the 1.6 million, residents brought that to your attention, okay? And you guys turned a blind eye to it. You didn't want to hear about it. You know, there were all these other lists of deficiencies, some of which the auditors picked up. Many they did not. I'd like to know what's happening with all those other items. You know, it's just been really disheartening to have people with years of experience. They know what they're talking about, and they bring issues to you. And because you either don't understand the point or you choose to shoot the messenger and discredit them, you ignore it. And, you know, these are all of our collective tax dollars, yours included. I mean, come on. You know, like I've said to you, Madam Mayor, many times, the buck stops with you, okay? And you've done nothing. So I'm very happy that Carl's here. I'm very happy that he's digging into it. I'm very happy that Crystal is here, you know? But, you know, the public, you know, going after people publicly because you don't like what they have to say because they may be critical, Councilmember Hennon, Madam Mayor, you know, I mean, it's just not acceptable. So I'm hoping that this is really just not a turning of the tide with policies and procedures and things like that and just getting our act together. But I hope that there's a change in council mentality as it relates to the residents. You know, as I posted on social media, you guys, you know, you try to really discredit, including the interim city manager, one of our residents with the state. You know, and you, Councilmember Hennon, Madam Mayor, you cited a partnership with the state. What you choose to ignore is there's a third wheel to that partnership, and that's the residents. And so you can go about and do whatever you like to do and act independently as you always have been. But understand there's a third wheel to that partnership that you're seriously ignoring, and I hope you reconsider.
Joshua Hunter, Berkeley. I had some comments. I did review the audit report. None of the documentation is available from the city. I got from the Treasury Department. I don't understand why whatever's been submitted to the Treasury isn't made available to residents so they could even review and possibly ask questions before this meeting. But I did review it. I have a number of questions. I'm only going to ask a few. So regarding the major streets overage, there was a budget amendment back in June for the fourth quarter, and the budget appropriation was actually reduced. And from what I saw from an activity report through June 13th, is the budget appropriation reduced it below the incurred activity through that date. So, but I think part of the problem was there wasn't any, on the budget amendment, there was no year-to-date report to show what expenses have already been incurred. And this goes back to what I've and others brought up regarding the income and expenditure reports that are required by the charter. They're required at the end of each fiscal quarter, not several weeks later. So for the fiscal quarter 2, there should have been some kind of report at in the January 6th meeting, but we're already at the second meeting and we still don't have a report. And then the charter says that's the quarterly at the minimum. There should be more often as needed. I made the FOIA requests for the bank recs back in August. I'm glad to hear they were reconciled. So that was good. That was good to hear. One last question, I guess, is regarding the variances that were mentioned for the carryover expenditures. I know that there was like 500,000 for other expenses. So I'd like to understand, why wasn't that reserved or assigned at year end if we know it's going to be rolled over? It just seems like the unrestricted balance is, being overstated. I think that's, and I think it'd be helpful to know exactly what the timeline is for these new procedures. Because, as I mentioned at the beginning in the meeting during public comment, there was the unbudgeted expenditure for the interfund loan, this new enterprise fund that wasn't budgeted and it's been spent already. So I think that still needs to be. It doesn't sound like things are all set. We need to have a timeline and know what the corrective action will be. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, I'm closing public comments. Ms. Mitchell, please read item number 5 on tonight's regular agenda.
Presentation, matter of receiving a presentation of the fiscal year 2024 audit by the auditors.
Can we figure out what, especially before the auditor comes up?
Yeah. I'm sure that everyone at home can hear.
Good evening. My name is Greg Soll. I'm the partner in charge of the city's audit with Andrews Hooper Pavlik. So this is our first year as the city's auditors being appointed this year. As Mr. Johnson mentioned, and has been mentioned throughout this evening, this was a significant year of transition for the city. When you have this level of transition from a financial director perspective, administration perspective, and a new auditor coming in all at the same time, coupled with the worst case scenario of not being able to locate documents, not being able to have a historical understanding of how transactions had been processed for some of these cases, it's not unheard of that there are audit findings and that there are restatements and error corrections that have come through. In nearly 20 years of auditing municipalities, I've seen it multiple times at organizations over the years. Keep going. Just keep going. Okay. All right. So there are a lot of factors that fed into that as part of the audit. As Mr. Johnson mentioned, the financial statements are the responsibility of management. We as auditors have to have a good working relationship with management and with administration, but our ultimate responsibility is to you, City Council, as you're being charged with governance for the overall city. So we ultimately report to you. The other thing I want to mention is an appreciation for all of the effort that Mr. Johnson and his department put into answering our questions and to providing us all the information. When he said we asked 1 million questions, that's true. We really did. Because we have to go through and essentially start from a blank slate, if you will, particularly with this particular engagement. So there's a lot of foundational areas that we have to go through. We have to understand risks. We have to understand controls, processes. Why were these opening balances recorded the way they were? What led to identifying the correction of an error, the restatements that we identified in the report? And then where are those gaps? So when you have all of that in place, it can lead to these findings and that sort of thing. These findings are, again, I've seen them all at multiple organizations. Berkley is not alone in that. So I just want to mention that as well. Our report of independent auditors is on the screen there. It is a clean or an unmodified opinion on all of the different areas for the city's financial statements. It's broken out into governmental activities, business type activities, the different funds, the discretely presented component unit, and the aggregate remaining fund information. For each of those opinion units for the city, it is a clean or an unmodified opinion. Our audit was performed in accordance with the standards required by the AICPA, as well as the standards required under government auditing standards. This is an annual comprehensive report, so it's a more voluminous, more detailed report than a typical set of financial statements. And as part of that, the city will submit the report to the Government Finance Officers Association for its consideration of the Certificate of Achievement in Financial Reporting, as has been done previously. So it's performed under those additional standards, and it's got the additional information around statistical section and the introductory section and those sorts of things. Our report identifies the responsibilities of management for preparing the financial statements, for processing the transactions, and it also identifies our responsibilities as the city's auditors for auditing the financial statements and the different areas that we go through in exercising judgment and looking at risks and all those sorts of things as part of our audit. Our packet also includes all of our required auditor communications, and that's at the very back of the book that you have. All those required communications are in the affirmative, and ultimately we were able to issue an unmodified opinion. So a lot of information that we went through for the audit. It was an extended process. We did get it filed right before the deadline there, so everything was filed timely with the state of Michigan. And again, I'm very appreciative to the city and to Mr. Johnson for helping us out and providing us with all the information. Happy to take any questions.
I guess it's the same question. Oh, did you call him?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I thought you said no. Wait for it.
No,
Sorry.
sorry, I was just
you said that you found these findings in other cities. Is there anything that, from a third party, that excites you or anything wowed you about these findings for that we received?
Nothing. I mean,
or unexpected, I guess.
Sure.
Maybe.
Sure. Yeah, we didn't really. In a first-year audit, right, wrong, or indifferent, we don't really have any expectations going in. We don't particularly know the condition of the records. Certainly, with someone of the expertise and experience of Mr. Johnson, there's a little bit higher level of confidence in terms of day-to-day transactions and accounting and that sort of thing. So that's essentially where we started, but we didn't have any expectations. And again, while we classify certain items as material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, it's a fairly low bar in terms of getting to that level. So the more significant ones we called material weaknesses, and then essentially the rest are significant deficiencies.
Councilmember Valani.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So you made a statement that, as the first year coming in as the auditor, you kind of didn't have those expectations of what it would be. When we fast forward to now the second audit a year from now or a little bit less, what is it, if anything, would be red flags to you down the road? Or what is it that now that you have a baseline, you'll be expecting out of our city, our finance team, to show that the steps are in the right direction and that we're making the progress that you would expect out of good financial stewardship?
Sure. So that's a great question. Thank you for that. Let's begin with the end in mind. If we get to this meeting 1 year from now and there are repeat findings, that's an issue.
Sure.
So backing into all of that, the first red flag will be, when does the audit start? What's the time frame? How long does it take to get the books closed out? Because that's really a sense of how effective is the month-end close, how effective is a quarter-end close, and ultimately feeding into the year-end close, June 30, 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So once things get all reconciled and closed out, the audit starts in that September timeframe, and we can get the reports wrapped up and issued in October for November presentation. That's all of playing into that. From an internal control perspective, what would also be red flags when we sit down for a planning meeting with management to talk about what's new from an accounting perspective this year, and we always try to get an update on the prior year findings. If we get to that meeting and there's been no activity, there's been no policies, we go through city council minutes as part of our audit and we don't see any reporting or new policies put forth for council consideration, those would all be red flags that would factor into that. I don't anticipate those. Based on everything that I've heard tonight, that all corroborates the conversations and information that we've had throughout our audit. So that's good as well.
Excellent, thank you.
In the event that there's something we don't like, we have the ability to call upon you at any time, or is it only for, your set contracted work? And not that it would be necessary, but if for whatever reason, lack of faith, concern about the numbers, not getting the answers we want, what are we empowered through you to ask you to do for us?
Sure. So we do have as part of our engagement, we have an engagement letter that dictates terms and conditions of our appointment as the city's auditors. We report to you as city council. So you have direct access to me. If there's any concerns, I encourage you to contact me directly. And we can, if it's, evaluating, looking at what significance of particular item you'd want to look at, can it be brought into the scope of the audit? Is it a separate project, a separate analysis, a separate engagement? I mean, we've had all those sorts of things come up over the years. But yes, you have direct access to me and can contact me at any time.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, so I'll ask my earlier question again. As far as you could see in the work you did, was there any evidence of financial misconduct, negligence, or just gross mismanagement?
That's a great question. I want to be careful in how I respond to it because we don't design our audit specifically to look for fraud or to look for immaterial issues. We ultimately design our audit procedures to render our opinion on the financial statements that they are not materially misstated, that things represent the underlying activity in a material fashion. Having that context, we did not identify any issues that would be indicative of financial mismanagement or things along those lines.
And then corrective action plan. So we're under a corrective action plan. That sounds scary, but how scary is it really?
Very common, all standard part when there are audit findings. You do have to prepare a corrective action plan. You have to provide that information. So it's sort of standard operating procedure when you have these sorts of things. As long as you execute, management executes against that corrective action plan and things get corrected in accordance with that plan and the timelines, that would be all acceptable.
And if everyone would indulge me for just a moment, I'm going to, not everyone at home is going to read the audit, so I'm going to read some of the findings from it just to instill the quality and the confidence that was the effects of the uncorrected misstatements are immaterial, both individually and in the aggregate. All the material transactions have been recorded in the accounting records and are reflected in financial statements. We have no knowledge of any fraud or suspected fraud that affects the city. We have no knowledge of any allegations of fraud or suspected fraud affecting the city's financials. Statements communicated by employees, former employees, regulators, or others. We have no knowledge of instances of noncompliance or suspected noncompliance with provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, or grants agreements, or waste or abuse, whose effect should be considered when preparing financial statements. There are no violations or possible violation laws and regulations, provisions of contracts and grant agreements, tax or debt limits, or any related debt covenants whose effects should be considered for disclosure in the financial statements. Expenses have been appropriately classified in or allocated to functions and programs, statements of activity, and allocations have been made on a reasonable basis. And revenues are appropriately classified in the statement of activities. So I just wanted, that's just reading directly from the audit and the audit findings of, the city's position right now. That's all I have.
Thank you.
My questions were covered with.
Okay. I'm good. Okay. Well, thank you for your diligence and explaining procedures and answering all the questions and setting us up for success moving forward. We appreciate that. Appreciate the partnership.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity to serve the city.
And you said you must go first.
Yeah. I will open public comments again, making the exception on this agenda item if anyone here wishes to comment on the auditor's presentation.
Greg DeRoss again. I had written up some remarks because I thought I'd be seeing more of what I've seen in the past. And so I'm happy that I haven't, in the sense that Carl Johnson has been very candid, as you've acknowledged. So I'm not going to rehash all that, but I am going to point out that it's a lot. Serious deficiencies in financial controls, financial statements, bank reconciliations, policies and procedures, record keeping, and missing paperwork. That should concern you, especially since it's still not all corrected. But I'm happy that we're making progress. I really am. But as I sat here listening to this, I had a concern. Our last auditor was only here for 1 year. Some of these problems are long-standing problems. So one of the things that hasn't been talked about that needs to be looked at is, I believe the auditor prior to the last one was Plant Moran for a number of years. We paid a lot of money for audits, and I heard about these deficiencies. Why were these not deficiencies identified 2 or 3 years ago? We used Plant Moran for supplemental accounting services during 2023. Makes me wonder about the quality of the work if they were our auditors and they were doing supplemental work for us. Somebody needs to look at that. Greg Patterson, Councilmember Patterson, you mentioned about a progress report. I agree. There's still work to be done. And you need to, as a council, carry out your fiduciary responsibility. If you had been asking questions along the way, we might not have heard this litany of problems that we heard tonight. I'm glad we heard it, but you have a fiduciary responsibility. And these issues clearly relate to your fiduciary responsibility. The other thing I'm not going to have time for now that I want to point out is this audit does not deal with a lot of things. It does not deal with non-financial issues in terms of how you make decisions, how you ask questions, how you say, why do I only have one estimate here? Other non-financial issues, hiring decisions, letting the prior city manager go at the beginning of the budget season and losing all the institutional memory. That's part of your fiduciary responsibility as well. And I hope you remember that as we move forward.
Any other public comment? Okay, I'm closing public comments. Ms. Mitchell, please read item number 6 on tonight's regular agenda.
Motion number M225, matter of adopting the City of Berkeley 2-year organizational strategic framework.
Is there a motion to approve M225?
Support.
Oh, motion made by Councilmember Baker with support from Councilmember Black. Ms. Van Vleck?
Okay. This is one of the projects that our former interim city manager, Nate Geiser, was working on when I was hired on, and a lot of time and effort has gone into this on his part, on all of your part, on staff. This framework, I think, is a crucial piece for setting us up for success over the next 2 years and guiding us through a well-thought-out plan that achieves our organizational goals during that time period. I don't want to take away from his presentation. It's a wonderful presentation, but this is going to provide us with a robust overview of the strategic framework that came out of all of those sessions that all of you were a part of and staff was a part of, and so I'll pass it on to him with that.
All right, thank you, Manager Van Vleck. Appreciate the opportunity to close out my time with you by passing off this strategic framework. I definitely appreciate the time that Crystal and the team helped to support this, the time that you all put into this as well. Berkeley is moving forward, and I think we heard that tonight. And ultimately, the idea behind this framework is to keep you moving forward despite headwinds that you will continue to be faced with, and keep you focused, especially for the next 2 years. There is work to do. We acknowledge that. We've been trying to move things forward. And so what this is about that we're going to walk through is an attempt to give you a framework to hold folks accountable, to keep yourselves focused for the next 2 years, as we prepare, I gotta stop saying we, as you prepare to move forward looking out in a longer term. But we thought 2 years was a good place to start. So, let's talk a little bit about local government strategies that don't work. Operating 1 year at a time doesn't work. Managing reactions versus leaning towards vision. Short-term decisions versus long-term impacts. Individual agendas, unclear expectations, avoiding accountability, capitulation, ducking tough conversations and decisions. As we've seen over the last handful of months, these don't work. And this is not the only community that runs into these challenges here and there. So what are some of the things that do work for local governments? Looking at multi-year forecasting and budgeting. Working towards a shared vision through a clearly defined mission. Shared goals and priorities with discipline and focus. Shared accountability. Courage to have tough conversations and making the tough decisions. Having the ability to say no. Understanding and considering long-term impacts when making decisions. Ultimately, we're talking about a strategic plan or framework. Again, ultimately our goal, or one of our goals here, is to get to some sense of cohesion. We've been talking about this really since the beginning. We were lacking a little bit of that, particularly not just amongst council, but really between staff and council. The only way we move forward is as a team. So we started talking about cohesion. We brought Nancy in to give us an introduction to cohesion when we started to have this strategic planning discussion. So just as a reminder, cohesion is built on trust, and we have to be willing to be vulnerable. This is the foundation of everything that you're going to be able to do moving forward. Without trust, you're going nowhere. We need to be able to have conflict. Yes, conflict. But that does not mean the negative version. We're talking about constructive discussion. We're talking about constructive debate. We're talking about the things and the conversations that are needed to make better decisions. From there, we look at commitment, which is ultimately what tonight is about. Once we've identified the ideas of focus, what's been discussed, working through with team members, we've got to commit to that. We've got to commit to a plan of action so that we are all moving forward in the same direction. Staff and council moving in the same direction. Staff knowing council's intent, council knowing staff's intent. Accountability. Without accountability, commitment means much of nothing. Team members must hold each other accountable. You all need to be able to hold staff accountable, but quite frankly, staff needs to be able to hold you accountable as well. There's only so much resources, there's only so many people. We need to manage our time appropriately, which again, what we're talking about tonight is an attempt to provide a baseline for that. Now, yes, things are always going to come up, which I think we talk about later. You're always going to save a little room for that. But ultimately, Crystal needs the direction to be able to focus her team for the next 2 years to get you, again, closer to where I think everybody wants to be, including the public. Results. Obviously, the ultimate goal with a cohesive team is to deliver collective results. So I don't know if this is going to come across the way I was hoping it to, or hoping it will, but we'll try. So let's take cohesion, and now let's throw a strategic plan into place. So we've got our mission, vision, values, goals. So we've identified our vision. That's our target, right? We've got our strategic plan. And think of that strategic plan as your arrowhead, right? Your arrowhead's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to hit the target if you're just throwing it by itself, right? So our strategic plan, I just forgot the terminology, the shaft and the Fletcher. Thank you. Thank you. We have a deer hunter here. So with those two things combined, we can actually move towards that vision. I don't know if that worked. Give me some feedback later. So we're going to walk through this relatively quickly. It's all going to be shared out there. It's all going to be made available. I'm sure there will be future communications on this. This will be something that will be discussed right now. I think that the discussion that Crystal and I have had, that there will be some sort of quarterly update. And so we're going to walk through the framework. I'm going to turn it to Crystal at each point just so that she can give you a taste of some of the action items that she and the team are going to be focusing on. So first and foremost, organizational effectiveness, which is part of what you heard tonight. Collaboration and strategic planning serve as core drivers of equitable, efficient, and effective service delivery and policy development. And ultimately under that, you are going to be working on cultivating a strong organizational culture. Hence, one of the reasons we pushed for the HR director. Optimize organizational structures. You've seen some restructuring happening, filling staffing policy, getting these policies and procedures in place that we talked about tonight, and optimizing level of service. Fostering stronger relationships with the community and regional partners. Identify and implement innovative operational solutions, and ultimately develop a community strategic planning process, which will come up a little bit later. So just a handful of examples.
So some examples, and just to clarify, to make sure that it's clear, I think, to everybody up here, but maybe not everybody watching at home, but you guys will be approving this at the priority and objective level, and then internally staff comes up with our task items too. And some of those task items for this priority include developing and implementing a merit employee evaluation process. Welcome, Jessica. She already left.
Not a good sign.
Very pertinent to tonight, documenting standard operating procedures across city operations. So obviously we talked a lot about that tonight. That's a large priority. And building out the human resources function. Those are just three of, there's quite a few others, but for time's sake, and these will, when we do the quarterly updates, we'll dive into these a lot more.
So the next one's economic sustainability. Later we'll have one on financial sustainability, but part of that financial stability relies on economic progress and growth. A vibrant Berkley embraces creative and innovative economic strategies that welcome and encourage commercial and residential diversity. And this was just one of the projects that came forth over the last 6 months or so. And in here, we need to look at and identify, prioritize, and deploy economic development tools. We did a lot of research on that. There's definitely tools out there that have not been utilized much in the past. Identify development opportunities and focus areas. This work has been in progress for a little while. Expand economic recruitment and retention efforts, strengthening the city's economic portfolio. This is something that has kind of taken place in the DDA district, but we're talking, across the city. Implement the master plan updates and the development process improvements, and improve city DDA strategic alignment. And with that, Ms. Manager.
Some examples include completing the economic development strategy per our redevelopment ready communities program, finishing our zoning ordinance, which we are almost done with, and ensuring DDA and city alignment through the DDA strategic planning process.
On that last point, ultimately, even with this start, but down the road, which again we'll talk about later, not only should staff and council be working in the same direction, but all the boards and commissions really should be as well. We should all be working towards the same the same vision. We all might have slightly different strategies to get there, but should all feed into this outline. Community assets. This is one of our biggest challenges, or your biggest challenges. I'll get it right before we're done here. Recognizing the cumulative human, financial, and community costs of capital disinvestment, Berkley will develop a sustainable long-term capital investment strategy that bolsters quality of life. I think a great example is what we just heard about earlier from Carl in context with, I still get some emails now and then, about water main breaks. We're spending all of our time and money and resources on the lead replacement program, yet I don't know what the total number was, but you had numerous water main breaks over the course of the weekend, and I think even today. 5. And that's, you only have so many people that work in DPW to manage all those breaks. Something that we need to work on. So some of the objectives: complete a comprehensive asset needs inventory and management plan. Pretty close to getting that going. Well, almost done. Management plan's also partially there. Develop a sustainable asset investment strategy that supports funding for the city's capital improvement plan. You heard Carl talk earlier today about general obligation debt. You don't have any. Is that something we can look at? We don't know. We don't have a multi-year forecast. Improve community resiliency. This is really trying to capture not only some of the city's priorities around climate change, but also changing weather patterns. And really what we had in mind on this one is all the work that's being done about storm water runoff, things of that sort. Improving facility and staff security and safety. This really was kind of a surprise to me, and especially once we were getting close to the election and recognizing what security we did not have in place here. So that is something that you all will continue to work at. Crystal.
So more specifically into some of those comprehensive facilities assessment, which obviously we're in the progress of, and we'll be receiving that report soon. An update to our CAP process and plan structure. Carl spoke a little bit about that earlier, and we're already delving into that. And then updating our city engineering standards, which we're also in the midst of.
Open communications. The City of Berkeley prioritizes authentic, transparent, frequent, and consistent internal and external communication strategies that foster confidence, awareness, pride, and community connections. One of those pieces, which I don't know if we specifically call it out, but we talked about accountability earlier. This framework, bringing something back to council on a quarterly basis so you can have a sense of the progress that is being made towards each of those objectives. So some of the things that we're looking at is identifying community audiences and the most effective city voices. Now what we mean by that is we communicate in different ways depending on what we're communicating, right? You might communicate one way to residents. Businesses might require something different when we communicate to Congresswoman Haley Stevens versus it's all a little bit different. So trying to figure out what's going to be most effective. Identify and implement priority communication strategies within human and financial resources. We have one person in communications. So if we're going to invest our time in communicating effectively, what's going to be the best use of our time and resources, your time and resources. And then foster meaningful community engagement and genuine relationships. And we heard a lot of great staff feedback on that last one in particular. Crystal.
So some of the action items under here include conducting a community survey regarding preferred information channels. So that will be coming out once the website is completed. Caitlin's working on a survey to put out to the public. Completing our website update. So you will be hearing from us next month after it's actually launched. Yes. And then supporting council outreach efforts.
And last but not least, fiscal stewardship. Berkeley is attentive to its fiscal realities, yet prioritizes value over cost. Seeks to balance the delivery of community services and unfunded capital and financial liabilities through revenue diversity, operational efficiencies, and increasing private investment throughout the community. This one went out of order. So some of those objectives clearly define and articulate the city's long-term fiscal realities. Identify additional funding strategies and partnerships, investigate new shared service opportunities, develop a strategy to address the city's unfunded liability in a fiscally balanced manner. And I just want to speak to that briefly. When we're talking about unfunded liabilities, traditionally you're thinking just pension and OPEB. I'm also talking about unfunded capital liabilities, like we talked about earlier. And then update financial policies and procedures, which again we talked about earlier. Crystal.
This includes completing a multi-year forecast, conducting a comprehensive review and update of the city's fee schedule, so annually doing that, and updating our procurement policy. So again, there's quite a few more in here, but those are just a tidbit.
Just a taste to get us through tonight. Okay, so again, we talked about focus and accountability. I hope you know, I don't like gifts and presentations, but I couldn't help myself because we started talking about this at the last meeting. And this is one of the hardest things in local government, is chasing the squirrels. There's always going to be things that are going to come up. There's always going to be things that could use your attention, little things, big things. Yes, we have to save some room for those things that we can't plan for. But if we're constantly reacting to every squirrel that runs across our path, we are never going to make any tangible progress forward. So, you guys need accountability buddies. And that's essentially the collaboration, the cohesion between staff and council and staff and community and council. All those things together.
That guy's name is Carl.
Oh. This guy right here? or the dog. Okay, so just some of the keys to success as you guys move this forward, which I believe you will be. I hope you will be. So just a few things that we probably all know is having defined goals. If we don't have goals, we have no idea where we're going. That's personally, professionally, organizationally. Having a framework, accountability, active listening, continuous learning. We're always learning from decisions, mistakes, professional development. All those things are important. Having focus and discipline, adaptability. There's going to be things that arise. Perseverance and resilience. There's going to be things that are going to be trying to keep you from succeeding. You got to push through those. You got to set them aside. It's going to happen. That noise is going to be there. I'm pushing forward regardless. And resolute determination. Ultimately, as we talked about, this particular framework really just focuses on larger priorities. This doesn't identify or define a vision or a mission. That's a separate process. I don't know where I was going with that, but basically stay focused on those things. And you need to have people, and the people are here, right? We filled some key vacancies. Finance was down to one person. We had those filled. You had a huge need for a human resources person. That got filled. You have a new city manager. That's filled. I feel like I'm missing a couple key positions where some people have moved around, but it's the people. The people are going to be the ones that are going to have to deliver that. The staff people, the council people, the community people, all the people. So what's next? So ultimately, the thought process here is that 25 into 26, a calendar year, we're working on building capacity as a team. We're working on building cohesion as a team. We're looking at building successes one achievement at a time. You are not going to get all this done at one time. When you see this list that Crystal puts forth in your quarterly reports, that's not all going to be done overnight. We were debating on whether or not we wanted to include the things that we were going to target in year 2. We left those off for now. So again, because staff wants to stay focused too. We don't want to get too distracted by what's going to happen out here in year 2. We're aware of it, but we're not going to focus on it right now. Ultimately, we're thinking of working towards is 26 and 27, starting to look at more of a long-term strategic planning process. So theoretically, in the next year or 2, you're going to know, you're going to have your long-term forecast. You're going to have a better CIP, looking at what are the extent of the capital needs, not just facilities and roads, but also underground utilities. And so when you're looking at a long-term strategic planning process, generally this is a much more robust process than what we went through. What we focused on was really an internal piece to get us moving. A longer-term strategic plan is generally going to be more intensive. It's going to have more community involvement, more community engagement to help frame what that looks like. And a lot of times some of the pieces you're going to find in this is a SWOT analysis. Now there's a number of different acronyms that are out there that could be used. I just use the one that most people know. Looking at the scope and situational review, we have a really good idea of where we're at right now. But when we start a bigger strategic plan, the organization is going to be in a completely different place. So what is the state of the organization? Identifying the vision and mission. What does Berkley want to be? And how are we going to get there? Goals and objectives, keeping them broad, long-term, specific, measurable actions, strategies, action plans. I mean, all this stuff you've probably all heard before. And then we get into some of the more complex stuff, and this might just be an internal piece, but you have the vision, you have the mission, goals, actions. Now, how are we going to allocate our resources? And what we don't have resources for, that's when we start to look at the give and take. Okay, this is a higher priority than this. We need to figure out how to pull resources from here and redirect them over here. And then what does that impact on service levels? What does that impact on staffing? What have you? And then again, we get back to accountability, monitoring, evaluation. It's a complete cycle. Once you do a strategic plan, you're not done. You're looking at it every 6 months, every year at a minimum, as you're going into goal setting in the budget season. It's a living document. Ideally, you're looking out 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but it's a living document that adapts in time. So I don't think I'm going to read these two quotes. It's already past 9, but I leave them for you. As you know, one of my favorite books is 13 Ways to Kill Your Community. I made copies available to those that wanted them. And there were a couple quotes that I've used with another client that I thought were really relevant here because, again, we're talking about moving forward and what does it take to move forward. Those that are familiar with the way Doug writes is going to understand the way these quotes are written and the intent of these quotes. Those that do not understand how Doug writes may misread these quotes. But the book is a great read and is definitely applicable for this community and many, many, many other communities. It's been around for, gosh, well over a decade now, but it still is relevant today. So the first one is, looking to kill success, live in the past. I'll read a little bit of this.
Yeah, why not?
The attitude that causes someone to live in the past, whether it is holding on to the idea of some glorified utopia or holding on to some injustice that must be righted before anyone can move ahead, is intended to keep everyone looking in the wrong direction. That type of thinking is a distraction from the project, initiative, or investment that will help build your community's future. There is an anonymous quote that reads, "Forget the past. No one becomes successful in the past." It is a valuable quote to hold on to. If you want to kill your community, live in the past. And you and your community are sure to become a part of the past, a distant, nostalgic, forgotten memory in the dustbin of history. I just think that that's such a powerful piece. The past is important. The past provides history, it provides education, it provides a basis for moving forward. But when we dwell, when we hang out in there, think about it for your own mental well-being. You know, you make a mistake in the past, you had a bad relationship, you did drugs, whatever. You continue to dwell on those things. It's really hard to look to pay attention to today, this moment in time, let alone look forward and strive towards goals in the future. The other one I wanted to point out was don't cooperate. Because again, success requires cohesion, cooperation. So successfully killing your community often depends only on the amount of energy and time you wish to expend in achieving that goal. Passively refusing to cooperate takes very little work. Aggressively competing with other organizations or communities takes more daily effort. But if you can induce a culture of destructive competition, the dividends can pay off for years with little effort. Fundamentally, killing your community comes down to refusing to cooperate with anyone. Don't cooperate with other people, other service clubs, other groups, or other communities. Focus on what divides you more than unites you. Concentrate on making those little arbitrary lines in the sand the real issue. That will allow you to remain fiercely independent, and eventually, you will be able to die alone. Again, I'd encourage anybody to read that book. I still go back to it every 3-4 months and go through it. That's what we have for you tonight. I wish you all very well. I don't know that I'll be back here again. There's one other project I need to try to finish up in the next few days that I offered to Crystal if she wants me to come back to walk through it. That's on the civic event policy. I said I'd be more than happy to. Are there anything you want to add, Ms. Van Vleck?
Just that this will not die with me. So our next steps, as he articulated, the immediate next steps is for us internally to start working on our kind of quarterly reports, and I'll lay out when those will be given to you. Obviously, we're kind of in the middle right now, so we'll kind of work through that. But there will be quarterly reports, and we can tweak. I have a presentation format that I've used in another community, so we can start from there and then see what works for all of us. So that can be something that we amend along the way. But that's the next steps, the quarterly reports, and then looking at a long-term strategic planning process, which, as Nate articulated, is a much more robust process. So we'll have to talk about what that looks like, and I think we have some ideas already about what we want that to look like, but it'll be much more robust. The idea of this is that it gets us through the next 2 years with a framework. That's why it's called a framework instead of being called a plan, and then we'll look towards a more robust plan in the future. Thank you, Nate.
Any questions?
Well, first, I would just like to thank you for taking all of the work that staff did, the staff council joint session. I know you were very diligent with this and did a lot of digging and talked to all of us and then some. And it's really beautiful to see all of that compiled into this. It makes sense. It's reflective of what those conversations were. And so I thank you for your attentiveness and your insight also into that, and then creating this document reflecting our strategic framework. Are there, Councilmember Lonnie?
Echoing Mayor Dean's comments, first off, thank you. I think back to when I arrived in this role a little over 3 years ago and was asking to see the strategic plan, and it was, there isn't one. You know, everyone just kind of asks for what they're looking for, and, you know, it just sort of gets done. And in my head, there was almost, Steve will know, Councilmember Baker will know what the sound is, like a record needle, like scratching. Like it was, to my organizational, like, design heart, it was like, wait, what? We can't all have different agendas. And we started some of the work with Ms. Davis a few years ago, but just to see where we've come today, it's night and day. And so I truly appreciate you kind of helping us get over that finish line. Just a couple of thoughts. I'm trying to organize all the notes I had here. But one of the things that just really stands out to me, not only about this, but kind of the whole theme of this evening, and for the 4 people who are maybe still listening at home, I think it's really important, is that there's a big theme of change that we've been talking about, that like golden thread that's gone through everything. I think back to in 3 years, the policies that have changed, the people that have changed, how we work together, how that has changed. And the fact that you picked these 2 quotes, I think is very indicative of the path and the journey that we've all taken together, working with one another. I'm very excited about it. It feels like there's a very palpable shift in how we work together, how we work together with our staff as well. And what I'm also hoping is that shift, it also shows the confidence we have, and that our residents then can feel that confidence in the leadership and the stewardship that everybody who's working together is providing, because it is in a very different place than it's been. And I think that the leadership that you've especially provided in 6, 8, however long months you were here was very significant in helping us move that needle there. So I'm very excited, despite the fact that we're in our 4th hour of meeting together. My face might not look like it, but I am indeed very excited about this becoming closer to just the norm. And I think that's really exciting stuff. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hennon.
Yeah, I just want to add on, you know, I know we already have a strong foundation, despite there are problems that there's always problems, there's always things to improve, but I'm just really looking forward to this, you know, building on the success we already have and just continuing to make the great city of Berkeley even greater. I'm really thrilled to see this. Thank you.
Councilmember Baker.
Likewise, thank you and to staff for I appreciate the journey that we've taken together thus far. Having been around a little while, we've had many iterations of these over the years, and to see something that is more tangible and actionable than prior councils have been able to muster and stick with, I think is very exciting. I'm looking forward to the future. I like the theme of change with the vision in mind. Is excellent. The specificity of the actions that will be taken is really cool. And on that note, with the quarterly things, we're not to decide this now, but if a work session or 2 would be helpful to crack open any of these kind of things, that would be great. Same thing with the opportunity to review the standard operating procedures in finance and elsewhere. So that it's rather than just like in here, like here it is, it's like be able to roll up our sleeves a little bit and ask questions. I think that would be cool. And then finally, on a performance note, I did appreciate the way you structured the interaction between the two of you tonight, where you kind of stated like, here's the thing, and then the tangible from the person carrying the torch, I think was very effective, and it helped.
I'm just a hologram. I'm not even here anymore. She's the reality.
You don't flicker like a hologram does,
Maybe that's what that static sound was.
Right.
Yeah, Nate bot. So thank you. That was awesome.
Okay, thank you again. I'm going to open this up for public comment. Okay, seeing no one, I'm closing public comment. Ms. Mitchell, please call the roll on M0225.
Hennon.
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes.
Galani.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Black.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes, the motion has passed. We've now reached our communications portion of tonight's meeting. Ms. Mitchell, who goes first?
Councilmember Patterson.
Little wins. So I did receive an email from Liz Petrie. She's one of our residents. She was going to try to make it tonight, but wasn't able. Asked me to read this aloud. As you all know, February is Heart Awareness Month, and heart attacks are the leading cause of death in women. On February 8th, 2025, at 10 a.m. at the Unity of Royal Oak, Women of Spirit Group is hosting Berkeley's own cardiologist, Dr. Sa, to talk about heart attacks in women, the warning signs, and the importance of heart-smart diets. The event is open to the public. Donations will be accepted should you feel you want to. Date, February 8th, 2025. Time, 10 a.m. And location at the Unity of Royal Oak, 2500 Crooks Road, Royal Oak, Michigan. So I read that as I promised. And it's good. It's a great event. So if you're able to make it, it's always nice to talk about heart health in February and every month. The Planning Commission will meet tomorrow. They have quite a few items on their agenda. One is the Jewish Center, Community Center on Royal Woodward. Wants to make a few changes to their facade, so there's that. A few other changes. Zoning ordinance rewrite is coming to them, hopefully for the last time. If Director Kapolansky probably, she might have left, but I'm sure she thinks for the last time to them. It will be coming to us. It's been a long, long project. And then there's a site plan revision to a gas station, the BP over here on Catalpa. And the beautification committee, they didn't meet. It's a little cold to be out gardening. So they'll pick up, I think, in March, I think is what he told me. And then thank you to our DPW. It was frigid cold out. I don't even know if that's the word. It was below frigid. And those guys are out there, and women are doing the duty to making sure our city is great. Our snow is plowed. Our sidewalks are clear most of the time. But the city sidewalks for sure. But it's just when you go to other communities and they don't have the snowplow we have. So thank you for that to our DPW and all the staff who, got through that cold. So thank you guys. And that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Vellani?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have just a couple brief things. No updates from the Environmental Advisory Committee at this time. And for the Berkeley Area Chamber, our strategic planning session was delayed. And all of our hearts and prayers and thoughts are out to the director of the chamber, to Darlene Rothman, as her mother passed away. Her mother lived to the ripe age of 100, so may we all have the good fortune to live that long and be surrounded by our family members.
Thank you. Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just very briefly as well, Parks and Rec will meet on February 13th at 7 p.m. At the Community Center, and the Library Board will meet on February 12th at 7 p.m. at the library. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Baker.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. The Downtown Development Authority, DDA, had a special meeting earlier today to review and approve a contract for an interim DDA director that was discussed and passed. And so hopefully it's not too early to say welcome back to Jennifer Axe, who was a prior DDA director for us. She's coming back on an interim basis, a temporary spot, while we fill the permanent position. So we're glad to have that inside view and experience to help lead us over the next few months as we fill that position. The DDA next regular meeting is on Wednesday, February 12th, so more information coming as that agenda is formalized. And for more information, you can visit downtownberkeley.com. Historical Committee, which does help look at our past so that we can position and prepare for the future, met on Tuesday the 14th of this fine month of January. Congratulations to Kyle Grimm, who was elected to fill the vacant treasurer officer position. He's doing a fine job. And we'd like to thank all of the residents and businesses that continue to provide donations and contributions of items to the museum to help preserve the history so we can tell stories and learn from them and grow. Most recently, we received some additional donations of yearbooks and a Pattengill sweater, which was kind of cool to see. Upcoming displays in the museum are focusing on some of our Berkeley churches. The first three being scheduled. February will feature La Salette. March features Berkeley First United Methodist. And April will spotlight Cana Lutheran. So come into the museum to take a peek at all of those. Their next meeting is February 11th, and you can learn more at berkeleyhistory.com. And finally, it was C.S. Lewis who once said, hardships often prepare ordinary people for extraordinary destiny. And as noted by Congresswoman Stevens earlier in this very meeting, our country's changed a lot recently. And many of us now live in fear and uncertainty because of the country's changing positions on equity, diversity, inclusion, and basic human decency and morality. Please pay attention to signs of emotional stress in yourself and in those you love, and reach out for help when you or others need it. You matter. You should be able to be yourself. Take care of yourself and one another, and please hug someone you love. Thank you.
Councilmember Hennon.
Thank you. The tree board is met in our first hour, so I don't have an update from them yet. And the Zoning Board of Appeals met and denied a variance requesting a commercial sign slightly larger than allowed by code, and they'll have no cases in February. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Black.
Madam Mayor, the Committee for Engagement and Transparency will be meeting on February 12th at 6 p.m. in Public Safety Conference Room. Ms. Flora, Director Flora, is going to send out a Google Calendar invite. We are still looking for engaged citizens, so I'm going to keep saying it. Get off of social media. We got a spot for you. You can come and be a part of our committee and say whatever you want. We love to hear it. We love to hear it. And we do have a mission statement, Madam Mayor, if I might read it.
Yes,
The
please.
Committee for Engagement and Transparency helps connect city administration and Berkeley residents. Members of the committee support the city's communications and IT departments by identifying ways to improve a resident's ability to gather accurate information and helping to clarify and amplify city initiatives. Now, that sounds to me like a perfect committee for some people out there. So spots are limited, but we would just absolutely love to have you. So at our last meeting, we discussed having our members be about 12. We figured that was right, good size. And then we are also going to make it a point to be at every single city event, starting with Winterfest that's coming up. So our committee is doing big things. We're looking forward to growing. And
But wait, there's more.
oh, and there's more. We want to encourage people to get off of social media and join our community. And did I mention get off social media? No, and finally, I do want to say that, you know, America's graveyards are unfortunately filled with a lot of brave men and women who suffered at the hands of poor leadership, bad processes, and no plans. And I think, for me, the theme of this evening that really makes me proud is, to me, it was about operations. And it was a testament to the fact that, man, we have some outstanding leaders. And our new city manager, Van Fleck, Director Johnson, Nate, and what he's been able to do, Madam Mayor. And again, man, you get the right leaders, right process, right people, you can do amazing things. So we are going in an outstanding direction in the city. That's all.
Thank you. City Manager?
Mayor, are you going to talk about Winterfest?
No, go.
Okay, so just to remind everyone who just, I hope everyone knows, but in case you don't, Winterfest is this Saturday from 12 to 2. There is an ice rink. We have food trucks, including Little Lou's and the Little Donut Factory. A fire pit with s'mores. So hopefully it won't be too cold out there, and we'll have quite a bit of fun. And then also, just to plug, stay off the social media except for when you check our page for information. So that's the only time you should use it. And then also, just because I thought it might be helpful for anyone watching at home who might not be watching our social media page, for all of the water main breaks, when those happen, you should, if you don't think it's been reported yet, if you don't see anybody out there, please call our DPW department. And then you can check up on our Facebook page. We report when we know that they've happened, and we give you suggestions on what you should do, which includes, if you're experiencing discolored water during or for several hours after the repair, you should run cold water from your lowest faucet in your home. So it's not necessarily something to be alarmed about. It's a typical thing, but this is how you run through. If you have issues past that, give us a call. But that's the recommendation, and that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Nothing for me, Madam Mayor. Thank you. And nothing for Mr. Christie.
Thank you. Okay, great. iLabs, the University of Michigan Dearborn's Office of Engagement and Impact, has honored the city of Berkley for our commitment to local business. And I can, as a former local business owner, I can attest to the support, and not only from our chamber, but our DDA. And I know here at City Hall, the encouragement and support of local, small local business. And I think that's a really important honor, notice, because we know how important it is to have thriving downtowns, because when your downtown's thriving, your neighborhoods are flourishing. And I will say both are true in Berkeley. Aunt Mary Merigan, otherwise known as Aunt Mary, Berkeley's oldest resident, passed away on January 22nd. She turned 108 this past September, and the community recognized her by celebrating with balloons. So her niece, who she lived with, Suzanne, just put it out there, hey, if you want to drop by with a balloon, Aunt Mary's turning 108. So of course I dropped by with a balloon, but it was a beautiful thing to see, all those balloons tied on the porch. And it was truly, our motto is we care, and we really do. And it was a beautiful outpouring of love for Aunt Mary. So may she rest in peace. I want to finally wish everyone a happy new year. I was not here on the January 6th meeting to give that wish. I wish you peace worth protecting and boundaries worth respecting, with just enough struggle for the growth to occur. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Patterson with support from Councilmember Villani. Ms. Mitchell, will you please call the roll?
Villani?
Yes.
Baker?
No, yes.
Black?
Yes.
Gavin?
Honestly.
Yes.
Hennon?
Yes.
Patterson?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes. The Monday, January 27th, 2025 meeting of the Berkeley City Council is adjourned.
Still in.